we knew none of this in 2003. Like when Kyle and I opened our copies of Fire Emblem for the GBA, we're like, I get to finally play as my favorite character, Roy. Who's Eliwood?
Well, I'm going to talk about eco-terrorism.
Got too excited about jorts.
I am leaving now with my Roomba or your blood on my hands.
I'm back on my bullshit.
What is meme if not air horn persevering?
No, this is not a family show.
And I quote, many American titties.
Why'd you have to bring Dane Cook to this, Andrew? No one wanted that.
Oh, you guys are not ready for what I've got today.
And I've apparently hit the very end of my attention span.
Give me like 30 seconds. I'm looking for rhymes. Hello and welcome to Debate This, the show where no one is right, but someone is definitely wrong. In this show, we take time out of our busy adult lives to talk about comic books, video games, and how the only two video games Norman Reedus knows are Death Stranding and Miss Pac-Man.
I mean, really
amazing.
Mm-hmm. Every game can be put on a scale between Miss Pac-Man and Death Stranding.
Where did this come from?
So this was pulled from a recent interview where Norman Reedus just kind of like accidentally revealed that they're making a Death Stranding 2. Okay. And the fun quote was like, Norman Reedus said something along the lines is like, it's just amazing how video games like since Miss Pac-Man, and it just the implication was like, man, you haven't played a video game since Miss Pac-Man. I can't imagine what looking at Death Stranding is going to do. Like, what is
Norman
that like?
Reedus playing Death Stranding. Getting a lot of Miss Pac-Man vibes from this.
Also, it's just wild to think that there's going to be a Death Stranding too. So,
wasn't that just like walking the game?
It was walking. It was deliveries of the game.
Balancing packages the game.
The thing that I think all of us have done as to make money at one point in our lives.
Right. But the game.
But
I've actually never delivered. That's the one. Okay.
Well, Kyle, do I have great Norman Reedus related news for you?
Yeah. All right. Well, I wanted to set this up really quick. So guys, nearly 5 years ago, Kyle Harper here heroically asked us all the question, if I summon a bunch of dragons to end all life everywhere, what have I lost? And guys, that question really does sum up the over 30-year history of Nintendo's most iconic tactical RPG series, Fire Emblem.
Name two others.
Famicom Wars?
Advance Wars.
/ Advance Wars.
Okay, that's the one.
And
that's why I said two.
Mario versus the Rabbids.
Yeah, I mean, technically Mario and Rabbids is a tactical
not,
RPG.
I suppose.
You made it, barely, but you made it.
I mean, I was going to say Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, technically. Anyway,
gross.
Anyway,
Sorry,
Fire
keep
Emblem.
going.
We're talking about Fire Emblem, a series that popular streamer and gaming personality Brian David Gilbert once described as chess, but horny.
Okay.
If you would only look at a sampling from Super Smash Bros., you would believe it is Nintendo's single most popular franchise.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Matt's favorite series that he's never played. Yeah. So before we jump in, I'd like to give a special thank you and shout out to our king of the chunky FTs, Dr. Garlic Butter in the Discord, who commissioned today's episode. Longtime listeners may remember that Dr. Garlic Butter also commissioned my voyage into the eldritch truth that is One Piece. So, specifically, Matt, you have Dr. Garlic Butter to thank for today. Just a quick pitch for listeners. You yourself out there, yes, that's right, you can commission your very own flavor text by listing in #ButtThwompNation for 3 months at the $25 level. In addition to commissions, you'll gain immediate access to our post-show for all traditional Debate This episodes, our Google Doc show notes complete with Lieutenant Surge's tidy whities.
They're there.
That was one time.
I've seen them.
It happens.
That's enough. And exclusive access to our monthly movie nights, which most recently was the universally panned New Mutants, which at the time of the recording, we have not watched yet.
Oh, I'm excited.
So to start this campaign off, I've called together all three of my chief strategists to this off-screen war council. Allow me to present Matt, smarmy fuckboy on a horse, Cole.
Is that one, Marth?
Todd.
Nope.
Edgelordy sellsword who secretly loves art and flowers, Thomas.
Is that one Marth?
and Kyle, 1,000-year-old dragon god appearing as a 10-year-old girl, Harper.
Okay, that one's not Marth.
That one's not
Well,
Marth.
I don't
That one's
know.
not Marth.
It could still
It
be
might be.
Marth.
Might
The answer may surprise you. All right, so we're talking about Fire Emblem today. I am very excited. We've got a few games to cover here. Before we jump in, I know we've all played Super Smash Bros. Let's go around like we always do with these flavor texts. What do you know about Fire Emblem? Let's start with Matt, because I think I know the answer, which is null.
My answer is that I have played every Super Smash Brothers game.
That's
and
correct.
that's it. I mean, like, I collected a lot. Okay, so I guess to answer this question legitimately, I played a lot of Smash Brothers Brawl, which had
Yep.
Marth and not
Ike.
Roy. What?
Roy wasn't
did-
in Ike.
It did
It-
have.
Ike. Yeah, it was.
Roy
it had-
was in Roy was in Melee,
Yeah,
and then he
so
came
it
back
was-
for 4.
Right, yeah. So Brawl was Marth and Ike. And there were a lot of collectibles in Brawl because it had a story mode. And as a general fan of Nintendo things, I knew that Fire Emblem was like this game series that was massive in Japan that was not really in America and also super not for me, but I did collect all of the things in Brawl. So I guess I know as much about Fire Emblem as the trophies in Smash Brothers Brawl has taught me.
I think that's totally fair. You know as much about as most people that like Nintendo that have never played Fire Emblem.
Yeah. And I guess, I remember like Three Houses came out, just a couple of years ago? And
2019, yeah.
2019. And I know, Andrew, did you and Kyle both play Three Houses?
I
Yeah.
believe so.
Yeah. I remember you guys talking about it a decent amount in Discord, but also it just not really being for me. So,
Yeah. Todd?
Yeah, I'm going to say a lot of the same things that Matt said, so I'm not going to say them again.
Yeah.
The only thing I think I have up over Matt is that I played a lot more Ike than he did.
That's true.
I thoroughly enjoyed ruining people's days with Ike. And speaking about, I think Brawl was the one. Was that the one where you could like mess with their stats?
That was the first
stickers.
That was
Was
Wii U.
the stickers one?
Brawl was
Brawl
Yeah,
Wii.
feels right.
Wii U was 4.
Yeah,
Wii U's
so that one. Because I dropped his defense to 0 and buffed his strength and speed and made him an Eldritch Terror. Yeah, I've seen a bit of gameplay. I'm familiar with what Fire Emblem has been, and I know that it is a probably much older series than some mainline fans may believe.
Yep. And I'll end with Kyle, because I know, Kyle, your experience is very similar to mine.
Yeah. So I have played every American release of Fire Emblem.
And you call yourself a fan.
Give or take one or two, maybe. I have not finished any of them. I've played about to where like the actual story kind of starts, and then the games got hard, and I was like, I'll come back to that later, and never did. But we got the GBA one hot off the tails of Super Smash Bros. Melee. So like when it finally was released on GBA, we're like, we have to play this, and play it. We did. That's the one I probably played the most, and then Awakening, and then Three Houses, and yeah, I'm gonna know some of these things, and I'm
you're
gonna
gonna
know these
know a lot.
characters. Yeah,
You're going to know a lot. Yeah, absolutely the same. I think almost my experience is identical. I loved Roy and Marth in Smash Melee. We're going to talk a lot about Smash, actually. I mean, that's when you talk about Fire Emblem games, Smash might be the most influential Fire Emblem game.
for real though. Yeah,
Yeah. But played the Game Boy Advance one. I played a few on ROMs over the years. And until I completed Awakening 3 years ago, I had played every American Fire Emblem game and had never beaten a single one, just like Kyle.
Okay.
Because
So
these games are
gotta
hard
finish.
as shit.
So hard, especially because
Really hard.
like you really want to do the no deaths run, and
Yep.
God, that's impossible.
It's basically doing a Nuzlocke run,
yeah,
like a Pokemon Nuzlocke run. And what that is, and for those of you that don't know what that, it's basically like a variation of playing Pokemon where as soon as a Pokemon faints, instead of like healing it, you throw it away.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
dies.
Pokemon with permadeath. That's basically what Fire Emblem is. But let's get into it. So like I said, there are 17 mainline games. Now some of those are remakes, some of those are remasters, some of those
like
are
a quarter of
spin-offs.
Bomberman.
We're doing a quarter of Bomberman. This is 200% of East, and this is about 25% of Bomberman. So
Hey, kids,
find
remember,
ourselves somewhere in the middle.
Check your quarters of Bomberman for fentanyl. They're putting that in everything these days.
All right, so the first game is the original game called Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light, and it originally came out for Famicom in 1990. That's the Japan version of the NES.
They didn't mess around with this first title.
No, they didn't.
You would have thought it would have been the Fire Emblem. And
Yeah,
then a
right?
simple name, but they're like, hell yeah,
no.
we're in.
So
no.
in the like Nintendo pantheon, it's like Donkey Kong, Mario,
Yep.
Link, and Fire Emblem, like Legend of Zelda and Fire
Yep.
Emblem.
Fire Emblem. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Fire Emblem. If you're thinking about your timeline, when did the original Legend of Zelda came out? And was that 89 or 87?
87, I believe.
87,
Okay.
I believe.
So this would have been a year after Zelda 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So fairly early in the. I'm sorry, Zelda 2 came out in 87. Okay, so this is late. I guess 1990 was. Super NES came out in 91, 92. So this is late in the NES Famicom's lifespan. Mega Man.
It's right before Pokemon really kicked things off, like in that era of Nintendo. It's like the tail end of the starting era.
Yeah,
of
so
Nintendo.
you're kind of in between like Mega Man, Donkey Kong, Mario, kind of getting a surge. Mario 3, I think actually Mario 3 is probably.
Yeah, so I'm
around
looking
this
at a timeline right now. Mario 3 was 1990.
Okay.
Dr. Mario in Japan. And then Dr. Mario in America.
Okay. So this is the last couple years of the NES and Famicom.
Also the same year of the Nintendo World Championship.
Yes, because that was introduced to SMB3. So let's talk a little bit about the developer behind Fire Emblems in a company called Intelligent Systems. Intelligent Systems, you have heard of them before, I guarantee it. They were one of the several of the Nintendo exclusive developers to come out of Nintendo Prime, Nintendo R&D 1. There's Nintendo R&D 1, R&D 2, and R&D 4. R&D 1 is like Nintendo Prime, so that's like Miyamoto, like Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda. So a few developers, including a man by the name of Toru Narihiro, kind of made their side thing and developed Intelligent Systems, kind of like, and similar to like Retro Studios, similar to some of the other like HAL, like who makes Kirby. These are Nintendo exclusive developers that only do Nintendo products.
Right.
So Intelligent Systems is the home to Fire Emblems, probably their most famous one, but they've also been behind Advance Wars, or what was originally called Famicom Wars, and the Paper Mario series, as well as WarioWare and Pushmo, which is a newer one. So anything that an Intelligent Systems is the weirdos. They do the weirdo games, right? The ones that have gimmicks and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Famicom Wars actually came first, and for those of you that don't know about Famicom Wars, again, that was later localized to Advance Wars. Famicom Wars is a more traditional tactical, like where you get like you build up units and you capture fortresses and you build and you pay for things, more like a Warcraft kind of tactical RPG. Following this, and Famicom Wars was huge, and much like Fire Emblem, that series wasn't localized for many years later. So Famicom Wars came out in I think 89, something like that. One of the developers at Intelligent Systems, his name was Shozo Kaga. He wanted to create a franchise that combined the tactical combat of Famicom Wars with more traditional fantasy RPG elements. Thus, Fire Emblem was born. Now, until late 2020, this original NES version was never released outside of Japan. So Fire Emblem began as a Japan exclusive series and would remain Japan exclusive for 6 titles. This original game, pretty bare bones compared to today's standards of the series, but the series also hasn't changed that much since its initial. I mean, this original concept is pretty much the way that the game plays today. It's chess with anime characters, with RPG characters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really is you've got your axe fighters, your sword fighters, your archers, your mages, flyers, tanks, right? Like, or literally like knights.
Yeah.
All of those archetypes are here, and that formula really hasn't changed. They've just added to it over the years. The big thing that everybody knows about Fire Emblem is, again, it's chess, but you have individual units. They all have names. They all have personalities. They all have backstories and stats and yada, yada, yada. But when one of your units dies, they are permanently dead. They do not come back for later in the mission. They do not come back later in the battle. And permadeath was the mainstay for Fire Emblem for 25 years
until
the modern age,
right?
Until Awakening. Yep.
Yeah.
So a very long time. So that became kind of synonymous with Fire Emblem, and because of that permadeath, and along with other things of this era, Fire Emblem also became notorious for its difficulty. This game was fucking hard.
Oh, I bet.
The original Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, it basically took place on a series of kind of samey looking maps. And these were these massive sweeping battles where you were constantly risking losing any one of your units. 2, if your hero unit dies, if your protagonist died, you would lose. And then 3, you couldn't save in between battles. So it was just like fucking just tough as nails.
So you had to beat it in one go.
You could save,
it was
but you couldn't save like during a battle. Like you.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Like right now, you can bookmark battles and things like that.
So this has now been released outside of Japan.
Yes. So
Where can I play it?
Well, unfortunately, Kyle, it was released on the Switch Virtual Console back in December of 2020 for a limited time.
Oh, okay.
And it was only available for 4 months, much like Super Mario 35.
Gotcha.
But it included but again, this actually, and this game, we'll talk about it a bit. This game was later remade for the DS as well. So you can play this game in its DS version, or if you have a friend who happened to get the Virtual Console version. I did not get it. I have no interest in playing this original version.
It would have to be a grind, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Real quick, before you move on to story and stuff. So you keep saying this game is like chess, but with anime characters. Can you describe the gameplay a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So you are looking overhead on like a battlefield, basically, and it's a gridded battlefield. So probably a better comparison would be like old traditional D&D, where you're looking at a combat grid and you have X number of spaces to move, and all of your units have different abilities, ways they attack. Some are melee units, some are ranged, some are magic, some are tanks, some are healers, that kind of thing. So D&D gridded combat is probably a better comparison. And basically that's it. So you command these individual units and you just try to kill everything on the battlefield. And that's it.
Oh no. Don't tell me I would enjoy playing Fire Emblem. That's scary.
You might.
You might not hate it.
I mean, okay, so like I do enjoy those grid-based RTS games. Like I like you said it earlier, Kyle, Mario and Rabbids. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
Then
I really
you
like
might like
game.
this for what it's worth.
It was caked in a little bit too much anime, and from the outside looking in, I assumed there was a lot of menuing. So.
Here's what I would say for you, Matt.
There actually isn't the menuing gets more involved in the
depends
later
on the
games,
game.
But
here's what I would advise for you.
Yeah.
Did you ever play Advance Wars when we were younger?
No, I didn't.
I would recommend, whenever the hell it comes out, I would recommend you look into the remake of Advance Wars that's coming out, because that's much less anime than this. And if you like that game, come back to this.
Okay. All right. Sure.
Cool.
That and Advance Wars is just
Advance Wars
game.
Fucking rules.
I was kind of eyeing the Advance Wars remakes when they did the announcement video like 2 years ago. So
yeah. Unfortunately, they're indefinitely on hold.
Yeah, pigeonholed.
Advance Wars rules. I'll triple that.
Yeah.
Endorsement.
So I'm going to talk a little about the story. Spoiler alert: the stories for each of these games, especially the older ones, pretty basic and the exact same. Exact same every single time. Just the names and the places change.
Are we fighting a bad thing to save a good thing with the power of friendship?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
Which, like, to be fair, that was an incredibly non-specific.
The year was 1990.
1990X.
Yes, 1990X. So long ago, an evil dragon named Medeus led an army of dragon-worshipping shapeshifters called Menakets in a conquest across the continent of Arcanea. So that's our setting, is this continent of Arcanea.
Oh.
A hero named Henri appeared and fought back the evil dragon, wielding the sacred sword Falchion. Henri would later go on to found the kingdom of Altea. Generations later, Henri's descendant Prince Marth, this is Marth,
Ding.
Hey, yeah.
ding,
I know that guy.
Marth is forced to flee Altea after his father, the king, is murdered and his sister kidnapped during an attack by the neighboring Dole Empire. So if you look at image number 1 and number 2, hey, it's Marth from Smash.
Hey, I know that guy.
Where's the other half
Yeah.
of his pants?
Same question.
Yeah, so I gave you the modern version and the classic version and the modern version, and I love these art styles in these old games because it's just so freaking 80s, man. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's got big Captain Planet energy.
It's big Captain Planet energy. There's a lot of like Greek gods and like Roman gods kind of influence here. These are very, very like Western inspired because these are all like warring kingdoms. I mean, it's just Game of Thrones anime style. These are warring kingdoms fighting for political power, but then it turns out that the ruler is actually trying to resurrect an ancient dragon deity, yada, yada,
And bring about the end of the world so he can rule the ashes. Yeah.
Don't
What
you
does he
hate
have
when
to
that
lose?
happens?
What does he have to lose? Andrew,
God
can you
dang, I hate to see
answer?
it.
Can you answer a question about this first image? This
Yes, sir.
ominous figure in the background that I'm assuming is the villain.
It is the bad guy. It is Andros from Star Fox. Yes.
Is it a
Yep.
giant gorilla?
It definitely looks like a giant gorilla.
It
It's
super
not.
does.
It just
Okay.
looks like a giant gorilla.
I
It
do
looks,
also.
Yeah, it looks like Gorilla Grodd. Go ahead, Matt.
I want to take a moment to point out in picture 1, in the bottom left corner, this group of people, the guy right in the middle has the most insane shoulder spikes I've ever seen.
Why is he in the middle of everyone? He
Those are
should
some-
not be in the
Matt-
middle at all.
He's
Matt,
like
those are
Animal
like-
from the Road Warriors.
Matt, if
Those are-
insane shoulder spikes are your thing, you're gonna like Fire Emblem.
Yeah. Those pauldrons are based on Hellraiser.
Fire
So-
Emblem has some of the most like awesome, ineffective armor I've ever
Yeah.
seen
Yeah,
in
it really does.
a franchise.
Shoulder
Uh,
spikes are to Fire Emblem as trip pants are to Kingdom Hearts.
Yep.
So Marth flees Altea. He flees to the nearby kingdom of Talus and begins to put together a resistance force to fight back the impending threat of Dolor, who have begun to invade the neighboring countries of Arcanea. So Dolor is setting out to invade the other countries. Marth and his new teammates then form the Arcanea League and travel across the continent, fighting back in Dolor in several missions, and continue to gain support and build their ranks. And that's pretty much how Fire Emblem works every single game. Is you start small, you've got your lord, you've got your main protagonist who's usually a royal or some sort, and then maybe he's got some retainers, maybe he's got like a knight and some other like loyal followers. But
Usually
really,
got a horseback guy, an
there's
archer,
a
and
horseback
a
guy.
knight.
The usual
Yeah.
D&D squad. And then you go through the first half of every Fire Emblem game is really just recruiting. You're going around, maybe you're routing bandits or you're protecting from a castle from an attack, and you're recruiting. And eventually you amass this like huge army of all these people, and you're kind of like, basically growing and expanding your influence, essentially. And that's what
Yeah.
you're doing. So eventually, Marth learns of Dolor's true purpose, which is, wait for it, to resurrect the ancient shadow dragon Medeus that Marth's ancestor put down so long ago.
Great.
And the only way to stop them is to acquire the legendary sword Falchion and its counterpart, the Fire Emblem.
Oh, so the Fire Emblem's a physical thing.
The Fire Emblem is a real thing.
Todd, I explained this in detail in our MacGuffins episode.
I specifically remember you saying the Fire Emblem is anything. The Fire Emblem is a song at one
The-
point.
Yep.
The Fire Emblem is a song at one point. It's different things.
Yeah, so
Let me
I
be
would
clear.
like to make this clear that I do not dunk on
No,
me for being surprised
Kyle,
it's a shield.
You're both right. You're both right because Kyle said it's the Fire Emblem is whatever you need it to be. It always is a physical manifestation. It's just different in the different games. And now we're gonna play a game. It's what's the Fire Emblem this time?
So we've got the shield spot on the bingo card is filled.
So image 3 shows the Fire Emblem. This is also actually called the Binding Shield, and it's not just a shield; it's an Infinity Gauntlet. It's basically an Infinity Gauntlet. That got Matt's attention. So what happens is whenever the Binding Shield is involved, so there's 3 games in which the Binding Shield appears as the Fire Emblem. And in each of those 3 games, part of what you do is you go around and collect the 5 gems that go in these little like inlet spots on the shield. And that turns it fully formed. That gives the Fire Emblem its full potential, basically. What is the Fire Emblem's full potential, you might ask?
It grants a wish. No, it releases the dragon.
Much like the 5 Dragon Balls, it awakens Tiki, an ancient dragon spirit who also looks like a 10-year-old girl. And that's image 4.
Because of course.
What the fuck did you just say to me, Andrew?
I did not think the 1,000-year-old dragon looking like a 10-year-old girl was in the original game.
The original fucking game.
I thought that was a modern thing they did. That's
for
upsetting.
What it's worth, Tiki has different ages. This is her young variation.
Can we jump to the game where it's no longer the young variation?
I believe she's an adult in the original, but I'd have to double check myself.
Aren't we talking about the original right now?
Also, that statement will hold up.
Tiki appears in several games.
This image is from a more recent, from I believe the DS release where they did the 10-year-old.
Got
version.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
got it.
Marth and team. Marth's got the Falchion. He's got Fire Emblem. He's got the army together. He's got the band. He's got everything. It's now time to confront the evil Garnef, who is the wizard, who is the evil wizard leading the dragon cult.
What a dumpy name.
That's Andros on that image. That's Garnef.
Yeah.
So he's got to take him down to secure Falchion. I'm sorry, he doesn't have Falchion yet. He kills Garnef to get Falchion. Once he has Falchion, then he successfully slays Medeus before Medeus can be fully resurrected. And that's the end of Fire Emblem 1.
Okay.
I understand the equation.
Let's
see it play out again.
How
exactly?
Do you know, Andrew, how long the original took to play?
Depends
roughly?
how much you die.
Well, right, but like assuming
a couple hours.
Okay, so much shorter than modern ones.
Yeah, much shorter than modern.
It's only a hit like 20
probably
maps.
Like 6 hours, I would imagine.
Okay.
So next 2 years later, we've got Fire Emblem Gaiden or Gaiden. Gaiden is Japanese for another story. And Gaiden is often used in games to delineate, or they call them Gaiden games, which are side stories, basically. Not necessarily sequels, but things that take place around the same universe, around the same time.
So has Ninja Gaiden this whole time meant like another ninja story? And
I have no idea.
And that's the whole franchise?
No idea.
I'm pretty sure the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
I'd believe it.
Yeah.
So in this case, Fire Emblem Gaiden is a side story to Fire Emblem 1. Which in Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, I'm just going to call Fire Emblem 1. Gaiden follows in the same tradition as Zelda 2, Super Mario Brothers 2, Simon's Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, etc., by being a significant departure from its predecessor. This was the Nintendo sequel curse. Fire Emblem Gaiden would incorporate a lot more traditional RPG mechanics, like freely traversing a world map, walking around towns without battles, in favor of the menuing that most traditional FE games do. Most Fire Emblem games focus just on the combat. This was more of like more of an RPG. Most of that combat, though, for what it's worth, remained relatively unchanged from Fire Emblem 1 with some minor nuances. The difficulty was consistent, of course, but ramped up even more because in this game, losing certain characters would basically soft lock you from progressing hours later.
Oh, good.
Love that.
And there would be no signal. It would just be like, you can't move forward because you lost this archer 3 missions ago.
What a great mechanic.
No.
Because now, like...
different time, man.
Like, the most it'll do now is it'll lock you off of side quests.
But
bonus like,
stuff,
if a main character would die, you just
it's
can't...
game over.
You can't proceed. Whereas, like, you can proceed if a minor character dies off.
Yep.
It just reminds me so much of, like, the things that the kids these days won't experience of like games that weren't built to be forgiving. I mean,
Yes.
games that would like you just be stuck. You're stuck now. You're stuck, and the Super Nintendo doesn't have the power to like create multiple saves for you to save scum. Like you're stuck, you're done.
And back then, you know, you probably games are so fucking expensive that you probably only would buy 2 games a year.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were only 6 to 7 hours in length, so difficulty was the only way for people to get value, to get perceived value out of these games. So like, it was just a thing.
Well, and it's also probably worth noting, like 1992. This is still at the time where like guides didn't exist. You'd call the Nintendo hotline to like,
and they'd be like,
get advice from a dude who got the game a week before you.
So
I don't even know if that was a thing in Japan, to be honest with you. That might have
wasn't.
been
That was a Nintendo of America thing.
That's true.
So
Yeah, you're right.
I do want to note here, there is a reason why we didn't get these games in America, because they were so hard. This was very much a Nintendo of Japan thing. There's a ton of games. I mean, Final Fantasy, half the old Final Fantasy games didn't come to America. Most of the early Dragon Quest games didn't, for the same reason. Nintendo of Japan felt that there were only certain games that were fitting for American audiences. They were not interested in localizing really nuanced, like heavy duty shit like this. And I don't think this would have done very well in 1990, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely not.
It did well when it did because of Smash, but yeah. So they also, like, for the same reason, like we have our own version of Super Mario Bros. 2 because the original Super Mario Bros. 2 was deemed to be too hard. See also Mega Man 2, like a bunch of other games that we got significant differences too.
Yeah,
so,
real quick, I did look. The main story of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, 26 and a half hours.
Oh, wow.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good call. Yeah, so fuck. It's a long-ass game. So a few interesting things that do pop up in Gaiden. Like I said, a lot of those things kind of went away or lived only with this game. But Gaiden introduced kind of a prototype of what would eventually become the support system. Which, you've played a Fire Emblem game, you've interacted with this. Now, in Gaiden, it was only so much as there are 2 main protagonists. Their names are Alm and Celica, and they kind of have clashing interwoven campaigns. So there's only a few missions where they actually fight together, but in those missions, if you pair them next to each other, they get additional buffs, like they might have better attack or things like that.
Higher crit rate or something. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. The last thing is Gaiden introduced the villager class, which is a mechanic where basically it's considered to be like a growth unit. This is something you can in Fire Emblem games and a lot of modern ones, where if you train them, like they start off really weak, but you train them and they get these like crazy stat growths as the game goes on, and they end up being like these monster characters.
It's the Eevee of Fire Emblem.
It's the Eevee. Yep.
Can kind of do whatever, fill what Eevee plus Magikarp, like it'll fill whatever role you need it to when it levels up, and it'll level up into something awesome.
Yep. So let's get into the story. So Fire Emblem Gaiden takes place on the continent of Valentia. It's kind of translation things. Valentia does exist in the same world of Arcanea. It's actually, in canon, it's a continent located to the west of Arcanea. However, Gaiden, while it takes place in the same world, the events occur thousands of years later after Shadow Dragon. The world of Valentia is ruled by 2 conflicting sibling gods. You've got the war-hungry Duma and the pacifist Mila. Do you want to guess which one's the antagonist?
The pacifist Mila.
That's correct. Yep.
There it is.
So
Feels
the
right.
2 that's not true. Their ideologies, the 2 gods' ideologies are realized in the 2 reigning countries of Rigel and Zofia, respectively. So one worships one, the other worships the other. Gaiden stars 2 protagonists this time. Childhood friends Alm and Celica, who we see in image 5. This is the cover art for Gaiden. Alm and Celica experience separate stories that eventually will come together as the last chapter in the game. So Alm and Celica are shown. So Alm is in the front there with the green bowl cut, and then Celica is to the left.
The green bowl cut on the blue armor is a look.
It's a look.
It's a look.
They do get a glow up in 2017 in their remake.
Question. What is Robbie Rotten doing there in the all gold armor?
He's hanging out, man.
No thoughts, just vibes.
Yeah, every Fire Emblem has a trap character. He's your trap character. So Alm's story begins with him leading a band of soldiers across Zofia to take out a general that has murdered the sitting king of Zofia in a coup d'etat that he later learns was funded by the neighboring country Rigel. While Celica, meanwhile, embarks on a journey to find the missing goddess Mila, the pacifist goddess. During her journey, she and her team murder a bunch of pirates and learn that Celica is actually the long-lost princess of Zofia. Surprise! Celica eventually finds Mila sealed within the sacred sword Falchion.
Right? Hey, it's back.
It's back.
And
sealed
together,
within the sword, you said?
Sealed within the sword, I said.
Okay.
Together, she joins up with Alm's forces, and the two march into Rigel to fight back against the invading army, basically. Alm and Celica fight their ways through Rigel and find the source of the coup d'etat, which is a cult that worships the god Duma. Surprise!
Yep.
They make their way to the cult stronghold, slay its priest, which causes Duma himself to appear. And so together, Alm and Celica slay God with the power of friendship, and then get married and rule over a now unified Valencia as the first king and queen of this new country.
Good for those guys.
Good for them.
So Falchion is like it's the hero sword, master sword, the Excalibur of it's just going to keep showing up and doing magical things.
It actually doesn't show up that much. It only there's when it comes to Fire Emblem's like world, for a while most of the games took place in Arcanea, and then they started branching out into other like universes, kind of. So Falchion only exists in the Arcanea world universe.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is also why the Fire Emblem is different things, because it's different things in different universes. So it's got some Legend of Zelda placey waciness, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so game 3, Fire Emblem: Mystery of the Emblem, which came out for the Super Famicom, which is obviously the Japanese version of the Super Nintendo, in 1994.
This one feels like the title for the first game.
Yeah, it kind of does. Well, so actually, interesting you say that, because Mystery of the Emblem is actually a remake and a sequel all in one. Yeah, so it kind of is. So Mystery of the Emblem was broken up into 2 parts, essentially. Book 1, or Part 1, was intended to be a full remake of Fire Emblem 1, but due to the cartridge memory in the Super Famicom, it was an abridged remake, so they had to cut some stuff, so it was kind of a retelling of Shadow Dragon.
Okay.
In book 2, or Part 2, was an all-new story set directly 2 years after the events of Fire Emblem 1. So this is coming back to Marth and Marth and Friends. The Mystery of the Emblem was a huge hit, way more so than Gaiden, making that the most successful of the Japan exclusive titles. I think since that time, yeah. So Mystery of the Emblem, until the international release, this was the most successful title.
Okay, cool.
Intelligent Systems also released 4 chapters as a kind of prototype pseudo DLC. So Japan consoles have Nintendo and Sega experiment with all kinds of DLC shit in the 90s and the 2000s with their different Japan exclusive stuff. I had never heard of this, but apparently Super Famicom had a incredibly short-lived satellite radio streaming service called Satellaview.
Yeah. Oh, that's a real thing.
Okay.
Yeah, let's dog ear that for one of our December episodes. So Intelligent System released 4 chapters for this game as like continuing story stuff, which is kind of cool. So Mystery of the Emblem also would officially roll out the real iteration of the support system. And this system, to kind of reiterate, what this does is it grants units additional buffs, improved crit rates, improved avoidance, like evasion rates, right? If they stand next to each other on the grid while they're battling. And that is something that has existed in different ways throughout the entirety of the franchise since this point.
the Fire Emblem version of like if standing within 5 feet of this character, you get advantage on this type of roll. Like
it is how Matt's paladin character can impose disadvantage with his shield.
Yes.
Yeah, it is definitely that. Here's a question that's kind of related, I guess. Was Dungeons and Dragons huge in Japan? Was there
It was definitely a thing.
Influence
definitely
of
a thing.
like this type of game?
Oh yeah, it absolutely was. Because Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy, is heavily influenced. I mean, there's dwarves and elves and all kinds of stuff heavily influenced by D&D. Yeah.
Huh. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
It's just that Nintendo of Japan knew this stuff existed, but they didn't feel like it would translate to video games. And it didn't have, and it's all about mass appeal, right? Like there are going to be fans of anything, but it's a business decision. It's will this have the mass appeal for the traditional Cheeto dust sucking 12-year-olds that play our games in America?
Cheeto dust Mountain Dew drinkers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the story. So this is 2 years following the original Fire Emblem. The events that are now being called the War of Shadows. Marth and Kada, who is one of the units from Fire Emblem 1, that's his canon love interest. Marth and Kada are about to be wed and are in the process of healing a broken Altea. And Kada is shown on image 6. This is actually a screenshot, or this is from the short-lived anime adaptation of Fire Emblem, which, interestingly enough, came to the States.
What?
Really?
Wow.
Yep. So people actually you could watch an English dub of the Fire Emblem OVA, original video animation, years before
You could
it came out
actually
in
play
Smash.
Fire Emblem. Yeah.
Wild.
Pretty cool. Pretty funny. So Marth gets called in for one last round and leads an army to put down a few rebellions here, a few bandits there, and he meets up with his old war buddies from Fire Emblem 1. Unfortunately, the call is coming from inside the house, and it appears that the king of the newly formed Arcanean Empire is behind all of these rebellions, and war, and war once again arrives at Altea. So Kada flees along with the rest of Marth's family, and then joins up with Marth, and together they embark on a journey to regather the spheres of the Fire Emblem and protect the world from ruin. And when I say they're running this play again, they're running this play again because Marth confronts Hardin, who is a character, a unit in FE1, Fire Emblem 1. Hardin is now the newly appointed king of Arcanea. He learns that the spirit of Garnef has been controlling him the whole time.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Garnef.
Is that the exact same name, or is it a slightly changed version?
Nope, it's just Ganon's back, baby.
Gotcha. All right.
Garnef's trying to resurrect Medeus again, so it's time to get the boys back together.
It is exactly the same thing.
Yep. We gotta kill Garnef and reclaim the Falchion again and slay Medeus again. I don't know how Garnef acquired Falchion again. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So he does that.
It's just the Game Plus version of FE1 then, right?
Yeah, fuck it. Whatever, you're gonna shove it down your ear holes. You idiots. You're gonna play it.
How many times has Link been in search of the Triforce? Like,
I mean, right? Like,
Enough. Yeah.
why doesn't Link just put it in the cedar chest? I don't know. So Marth gets Falchion again, slays Medeus again, but this time he and the remaining nobles decide to create a bit of League of Nations, if you will, and instead of just saying like, hey, we're just going to make a bunch of god kings, they kind of come together as one unified Arcanean alliance and appoint Marth as king of the Arcanean alliance.
Oh,
okay.
So
cool.
they make the United States, but
they make the United Nations. Yeah,
United Nations,
but like if they had a king.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So that's Mystery of the Emblem. Fast forward another 2 years. Now we have the fourth game, which is Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War.
Yeah, see, not as catchy as perhaps their opening title.
I can see why this one didn't sell as well as Mystery of the Emblem.
So this is the one where, every series has the one for purists.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is Genealogy of the Holy War. This is the real, like, push up the glasses, like, well, I play FE4. The Fire Emblem subreddit is quite a place.
Is this the dream drop distance? Is that this one?
I think it's actually, if you're going to compare it to Kingdom Hearts, this is the Birth by Sleep, which is the one where everybody is like, no, it's the best one, I promise.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
If you play all the way to the end and play it
genealogy,
again, right?
So what it's where genealogy of the Holy War is legitimately interesting. It is definitely probably still one of the most ambitious FE titles. So Genealogy of the Holy War was designed to be this epic spanning several decades of a conflict. Think like Romance of the Three Kingdoms, right? Like think like this big like Odyssey or Shakespearean like you know what I mean? Like very, very theatrical, right? The primary setting this time is in a brand new continent called Jugdrall. Jugdrall is not a great name, but again, localization. This also, again, like reminder, this was never actually fully translated to English. This is all just like fan translations.
Yeah.
Yep. So Jugdrall,
the good stuff,
the good shit right here. So Jugdrall is comprised of 8 kingdoms. The 8 kingdoms don't really matter. This is a completely separate setting from Archnea, like I said, but designers have gone on record stating that Genealogy takes place in the same universe, but hundreds of years before Archanea's creation. So it's possible that this is Archanea before it was, but again, it doesn't really matter. No one's like, again, this is the Quentin Tarantino, everything's related, who cares? They both link their world's backstory to ancient dragon gods, for what it's worth. So Genealogy introduced a ton of new things that would go on to be iconic staples of the series, most notably the weapon triangle. Kyle, what's the weapon triangle?
The weapon triangle is the Pokemon strengths and weaknesses, but in Fire Emblem.
It's the rock, paper, scissors of medieval weaponry.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Swords beat axes, and lances beat swords, and axes beat lances, and you do that to not lose as hard.
So this spices up your melee fighters. So now it's not just melee units, but you've got strengths and weaknesses. So this gives you a little bit more tactical decisions when you're playing. The other major mechanic here was the genealogy part of it all. So this game actually takes place in 2 major phases across a 15-year gap.
That's a lot of time for one game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now it's a time skip. It's not, you don't play through 15 years. It's a time skip.
Yeah.
But yeah, this plays across, because this is playing across an entire war. So you start in part 1 and you start to build up this team, and you throughout part 1 you can pair up male and female units and smush them together, and they will have children.
Like, you know, people are wont to do in war.
That people are wont to do in war.
Yeah.
I mean, right? And then in part 2, all of those children from your units become your playable team.
You make a child army.
We're doing
You make a child
soldier?
army.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make a child army.
You know, I'm not going to lie. Coming into this flavor text, didn't see that one coming.
We've talked about Fire Emblem before. I feel like you should have unilaterally saw that coming.
I guess.
It's really cool mechanic. They've brought it back in a few games. But this was, again, like an incredibly ambitious thing, because this is like a Super Nintendo game. But like really, really cool. And people love this. This is a huge, again, this is the game for the real fans. While there are fan translations out there, this is one of 3 Fire Emblem games to never have gotten an international release. So some of the games we talked about before, Shadow Dragon and Gaiden, both have been re-released for handheld. This one, the next one we talk about, in Mystery of the Emblem, have never been, or I guess 4, because Binding Blade. So 4 have never been localized.
This one, I've been looking these up as we go, and when I looked up Fire Emblem 4 remake, I got a lot of Reddit pages. How I imagine the Fire Emblem 4 remake would happen.
So
it's like,
this is also, because this is the purists game, a lot of people have speculated that they're going to remake this on Switch. I do not think they're going to remake this on Switch, because I think they'll remake Mother 3 on Switch before they remake this game.
Yeah.
And I do not think they're going to ever remake Mother 3. So let's talk about the story. Obviously, a 15-year war epic. This story is huge. This game is huge. I'm only covering the highlights. So part 1 stars a man named Sigurd, who is the son of one of the noble lords of Granvale, who's one of the 8 kingdoms. Sigurd begins by leading this campaign, fighting back an invasion into his weakened kingdom. During this time, he meets a mysterious woman named Deirdre, and the two fall in love and have a child named Seliph. And image 7 is Sigurd. So he's our first protagonist for part 1.
Yeah, Sigurd is not subtle.
No.
Not at all. No,
the whole white cloak, white outfit,
he looks
white horse.
He looks like Kaiba.
He does look like Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
He is the subject of an opera. Like, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, he's a real fancy boy.
He's a real fancy boy.
So soon after he meets Deirdre, the Prince of Granvale is assassinated, and Sigurd and his father are framed for the murder, and they're both forced into exile. Meanwhile, an evil archbishop kidnaps Deirdre and attempts to erase her memories and forces her to marry the lord of neighboring Velthomer, because, as it turns out, both she and this lord both carry blood from an ancient race of dragons.
There it is.
And their union would spawn the vessel for reincarnating an evil earth dragon named Loptus.
Just so much would be solved if dragons wouldn't be polymorphing and getting horny with people.
I mean, people gonna do what they're gonna do.
These dragons are pulling Zeus.
Dragons gonna do what they're gonna do, Todd.
Yeah, man. So Sigurd, still in exile, hides his and Deirdre's child, named their child Seliph, hides them away from the dragon cult. He then fights his way back to Granvale, again, cutting down bandits and cultists and things along the way, building an army. But he arrives to find that Duke Arvis, who's the one that married Deirdre, Duke Arvis had already married Deirdre, and then he gets murdered by Arvis, Game of Thrones style, publicly executed.
Nice.
Bummer.
15 years later, Granvale now holds dominion over the entirety of Jugdrall, and Arvis leads as its emperor. Deirdre and Arvis have 2 children, again, Deirdre being Selith's birth mother. They have 2 children, both of whom are vessels for ancient dragon gods. Their son is the evil dragon, and their daughter is the good dragon.
Of course.
It's subtle what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And so Deirdre is able to transport the good dragon daughter out, while the bad dragon son overthrows his father and thus assumes command over Granvale.
Sure. It's the Targaryens, but
kinda.
But Japan.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Sigurd's son Seliph comes out of hiding, and he then builds an army of child soldiers, and made up of the children of Sigurd's resistance team from 15 years prior. And image 8 is Sigurd.
I like Sigurd better than, or you mean Seliph?
Seliph, sorry.
Yeah. I like Seliph more than Sigurd.
Yeah, so there's a lot of blue-haired sword boys.
Seliph looks a lot more like Marth than...
Yes.
Mm-hmm. A lot of them do.
A lot of them look like Marth, but yes.
It's just different Marth.
It's a different Marth than the former Marth.
If you've ever played Smash Bros, you know that they're all just different Marths.
Yep.
So Seliph and his team of child soldiers fight back against Arvis's army, and together with the good dragon daughter, successfully sealed the bad dragon away. And Seliph then takes the throne as the rightful ruler of Granvale. Hooray!
Great.
That's genealogy. So on to our next game.
Before we go on, I want to say I've always wondered why the names get so weird throughout this series, and it's because they have to come up with like 300 names every game.
There's a really good video. I mentioned BGG, Brian David Gilbert, his Unraveled series did a Fire Emblem episode.
Yeah.
And there's a point where he notes, 1, there are 596 characters as of 3 houses.
Oh my God.
But more importantly, 2, only 3 of them repeat names.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Next game. This game is called Thracia 776. Rolls off the tongue. It is called that because Thracia is what's considered to be an interquel.
Is this our multiverse? Is this our multiverse entry?
Not quite. This takes
Okay.
place in between parts 1 and 2 of Genealogy.
This is our Halo ODST.
This is our Halo ODST, or what's the Rogue One?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this game was originally released on the Japanese exclusive Nintendo Power, not the magazine, a peripheral called Nintendo Power, which was a system that allowed people to download ROMs onto this like flash memory card, and then they could play them on their Famicom or Game Boy systems or Super Famicom.
Wow.
That's pretty advanced.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, Japan, this is also 1999, but their experimenting with
still.
really cool and weird shit. Just stuff that we never got.
I mean, high-speed internet wasn't really like a thing at that point.
No, not at all. This is also for like super rich people.
I mean, this was also in Japan where like they got an internet infrastructure
internet
like
cafes
way
and all that
before
stuff. Sure,
we
that's
did.
right.
Yeah.
You could probably go somewhere and take your physical
somewhere.
ROM and download it.
You go to a CVS and get it, like you get your photos. And then they released a full Super Famicom version the next year. So this was released in 1999. Do you guys remember what else was around in 1999 at this point?
Pokemon Gold and Silver for one.
That one.
The N64.
Also, the N64 is what I was looking for.
I did not
Those
know
answers are
when
correct.
the N64 actually released. So
96.
Yep.
okay.
So Thracia is a bit of a dark horse. It's the least selling, or one of the least selling entries of all time.
Oh, so it is the double dash of Fire Emblem.
No, there is a double dash here. We're gonna get to it for more reasons than that. But it's your Link's Awakening.
Okay.
You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Thracia did introduce a few new mechanics that would stick around. Rescuing units is something you can do. So like if you got somebody in the line of fire, you can like pull them back and defend, basically like sacrifice their turn to defend them. Also capturing objectives. So until this point, you could only win by killing everything. In more later Fire Emblem games, one of the other objectives is seizing thrones. So it's just like landing on a space, essentially. So this introduced capturing, and then it also introduced Fog of War, which if you don't know what that is, it's just you can't see the whole battlefield. You can only see what's in your immediate unit's like vision range, sight range.
Sure.
One thing that didn't stay that they used was this fatigue mechanic, which not only on top of the permadeath and general difficulty of Fire Emblem, this would artificially take units out of battle for an entire matches or entire missions if they just did too many actions.
Oh,
so if you had somebody that just like, hey, this is my tank, I want him to attack. Mm-hmm. If he attacked too much, he would just be tired for the next mission.
Oh,
that's fucking mean.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah. So obviously, like this game game was not very successful, due in part to the difficulty, but also just its release time coming 2 years into the Nintendo 64's life cycle. Mm-hmm. People just weren't interested in a Super Famicom game in 1999-2000.
Yeah.
And also like Genealogy, Thracia was never officially localized, like I said. Although there are some fan translations for this one, there are a ton more for Genealogy. Story is really short. I've got 2 bullets here. So Thracia 776 stars a man named Leif, who is a playable character from part 2 of Genealogy. So this is kind of like his prequel, I guess. He is the heir to a house within the country of Thracia. During Arvis's reign, during like Granville's like invading all these other countries, Leif survives an attack in his home state with the help of one of Sigurd's crew, and then goes into hiding. Image 9 is Leif. The Duke that takes Leif's throne then sends a bunch of people out to kill him, and then Leif enlists a gang of freedom fighters and fights back against the Granville soldiers, eventually liberating northern Thracia from their influence by killing their leader, who also happens to be a lich.
Not a dragon.
Not a dragon.
It is different.
Not a dragon.
Sometimes it's zombies.
Cool. Next game. So now we're getting into the GBA generation. So this is the one that Kyle and I kind of cut our teeth on.
This is the one I got probably almost beat. Was it
Not
within 5 maps?
Quite. Not quite. We got
yet.
one more
This
before that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So before we get into the GBA games, I do want to talk about, like I said, the most influential Fire Emblem game to this point, which of course is Smash Brothers Melee. So Masahiro Sakurai, developer, creator of Smash Bros., was such a fan of the series in Japan that he insisted that Marth be an addition to the roster of characters. He had planned on Marth being in the original and just like didn't have space. But like this was like on his hot list of like, I need Marth to be on this. Because again, like Fire Emblem, the original Fire Emblem sold 300,000 copies in Japan. Like not terrible, but definitely was like not a huge series. Like this was a series for the fans.
How many did you say it sold?
Like 300,000, I think.
Okay.
You can, if somebody wants to
I am Googling
fact check me.
Okay.
The numbers are there in Wikipedia. I vaguely remember it being 300,000 to 400,000, but fact check me.
It's 750,000.
Okay, great. So, successful, but not like blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
But Sakurai still is obviously a huge Fire Emblem fan. And interestingly enough, this is 2000. Smash Melee came out in 2001. It had been now 8 years since a generally popular Fire Emblem game had come out. So the buzz was definitely waning. And also Marth hadn't been in a game until this point since Mystery of the Emblem, which was 94, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Marth being in there is kind of an anomaly to begin with. But not only did they put Marth in there, he also insisted, let's put Roy, because like he basically worked with intelligence systems to say like, hey, let's promote the next Fire Emblem game that you guys have coming up by putting your character. So Roy was included in Fire Emblem before he appeared in his own game.
Well, they did that. They've done that for a lot of Smash releases.
He was included
in
for Smash Bros before he was in it.
Yeah.
Melee. Yes.
Yeah.
Is that not
you
what I said?
that he was included in Fire Emblem before he was in his own game.
Oh,
but
sorry.
Yeah,
no, it's cool.
In
He was
Smash
in
Bros.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool. And then in a turn of fate, Sakurai planned on those two characters being Japan exclusive. But at the last second, Nintendo of America were like, nah, they seem cool. Let's keep them in.
Yeah.
And it completely changed the trajectory of the entire franchise.
Thus became the dawn of Sword Boys.
So for reference, Melee did half the sales that Mystery of the Emblem did in its first week in Japan. So Mystery of the Emblem sold 750,000 copies its whole run. Super Smash Bros. Melee sold 400,000 copies its first week in Japan, in its Japan release.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that tracks. So again, this series is never going to be a mainline series like a Mario or a Zelda, but it does well enough.
Yeah.
So Marth and Roy were included. We all played Melee and were like, who are these sword boys? I fell in love with Roy. I loved Marth. Kyle, sounds like you did the same.
Oh, yeah.
But
I fell in love until someone got really good with Marth, and then I hated Marth with a passion, but that's different.
There's in Melee that theme that dun, 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 that's like the main fight theme from the original Fire Emblem, and they reused it in the Shadow Dragon remake. They used them obviously they've used like a bunch of locations from the original. So yeah, it's really cool stuff. Let's go back to Roy. So Roy was, like I said, promotional stunt for the next game called Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade, which came out for the Game Boy Advance in 2002. Now, Binding Blade would introduce yet another continent to the mix, but it also did a couple other things. So Binding Blade basically set the tone for the GBA games moving forward, and there are 3 GBA games to be precise. So it changed up the support system to be what it is today. So this basically incorporated the support dialogues that you could collect. Like basically these are additional like little dialogue scenes when you fight when you pair your characters up. They will build relationship status, and they will get these little support dialogues that just shows a little bit more into their backstory, their characterization. It helps people, people identify with the people, and it builds them on them a little bit. other than just being like the sword dude and the archer gal.
It gives a story reason for why they're supporting each other instead of just a mechanical one.
Yeah, exactly. And certain units can pair up with each other, so they don't all have dialogues with everybody. So like the game intends for certain people to be mixed with others, and then it also added magic to the weapon triangle. So not only do we have axe, spear, or spear, sword, we now have arcane magic, dark magic, light magic.
Yep.
So Binding Blade, like I said, introduces the fourth continent to Fire Emblem, Elib. E-L-I-B. Backstory with Elib: a long time ago, humanity and dragons fought each other in a war known as the Scouring.
Found it.
Humanity ultimately defeated the dragons with the power of the 8 divine weapons, which were then scattered across the lands.
Are the 8 weapons the Fire Emblem?
Our protagonist, is,
No reading ahead, Todd.
Our protagonist is Roy, the son of Eliwood, who is the ruling Marquess of the Kingdom of Faray. I think it's Faray or Faray. I don't know. Hey, it's Roy from Smash in Image 10. You know that. You know him.
He's our boy.
That's our
Roy's
boy.
our
Roy's our
boy.
boy. That's right. What a weird localization thing.
Right.
Anyway, localization is a hell of a drug, man.
It super is.
Roy collects a team of soldiers to fight back against the invading kingdom of Byrne. Same play, different names. During the fighting, Roy meets up with a woman named Guinevere, who fled Byrne with the royal treasure of Byrne. Say it with me. The Fire
Friend.
Emblem.
Oh.
Honestly, it could have been the Fire
could have
Emblem,
been
Power of
literally
Friendship,
anything.
or Ancient Dragon brought back to destroy the Earth.
That's
Yep.
fair. Roy and his crew discovered the Durandal, which is one of the 8 divine weapons, and then journey across Elib to find the remaining 7. They do that, and then Roy leads an army to Byrne's doorstep and discovers the Binding Blade, which is a powerful sword that can rule all over the 8 divine weapons. Roy and company learn that during the Scouring, the dragons sealed away a divine dragon named Idun. It's literally spelled like I-D-U-N-N, like I done.
I done.
The ancient dragons enslaved her to reproduce dragons at an alarming rate, but the ancient dragon demon was ultimately slayed by a hero wielding the Binding Blade. Byrne, of course, as one does, is attempting to resurrect Idun and initiate a new age of dragons to lay waste across the land.
Love it.
Cool.
So, of course, as you do, Roy and team fight a dragon with the power of friendship and the Fire Emblem. Case closed.
Love it.
So now we get to Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade, or Fire Emblem for the giant, what was localized as Fire Emblem
Fire
for the
Emblem.
Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this is the
This
one
is the one.
that we got.
Yep.
What's so weird about Blazing Blade is actually a prequel to Binding Blade.
Yeah. I did know
And-
that. I did know
Yep.
it was like the prequel to the one with Roy in it.
And they were just like, fuck it. We won't give him the one with Roy in it. We'll give him the prequel with his dad.
We won't give him the one with the character they all know and love.
Yeah. Let's give him the one with his dad. And that's what those jerks did. And we still have not got Binding Blade.
Nope.
So, yep. So after, and also I should note at this point, Advance Wars had also come out. So it wasn't just Smash Bros. Melee. It was also Advance Wars was localized, or Famicom Wars was localized to Advance Wars. That also came out around the same time. That game was pretty popular for the GBA. Japan was, and again, like Warcraft was out there, right? Like,
Yep. Warcraft, StarCraft,
tactical
both
RPGs were
huge.
definitely a thing in the West.
Yeah.
Like Japan was like, yeah, it's time. Let's launch
Let's
the
give
nuclear
these,
sub.
Give these dumb Americans.
Yeah, let's give them, these Cheeto dust nerds, their due. So Nintendo finally decided to localize Fire Emblem as localize the Blazing Blade as Fire Emblem, that released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance. Now, for the first time with Blazing Blade, we actually get 3 protagonists that lead 3 separate campaigns. So the game is broken up into 3 parts. You've got Roy's father, Eliwood, who I mentioned, he's the Marquess of Faray. You've got Eliwood's friend, Hector, who appears in the beginning chapters of Binding Blade. His daughter actually marries Roy, and they become leaders of Faray together.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's why Hector's in there. And then a brand new character named Lynn.
Yes.
Now, Lynn was developed Lynn was developed to be a tutorial chapter for the baby Americans.
There we go.
Yep.
Lynn's campaign exists like in its own thing. It's like kind of disconnected from Eliwood and Hector's story.
I do remember that.
And Lynn's campaign was actually optional in the Japanese version in Blazing Blade. But it's mandatory in the US version.
If you didn't want to play the dumb American version of the game.
Yeah,
good.
because it teaches you the absolute basics.
I forget which Super Smash Bros. Ultimate like new character release it was, but there was one where it was like huge, like very heavily hinted, like this is going to be a Fire Emblem character, guys, and everyone was like, it better be Hector or Lynn, or I'm going to burn my copy of
it wasn't.
Smash, and it wasn't either of them.
People love Lynn. Lynn is like still to this day one of the most popular, famous characters, and I think a lot of it's because it's the first, like that was the first character anybody playing that first game ever met.
Yep,
sure.
You know, Lynn also is a trophy in Brawl and 4.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Well.
Yeah. So the so let's get into the story. So like I said, there's 3 campaigns. The first campaign focuses on Lynn, who is a swordswoman living as a nomad on the plains of Sakai. And this is introduced as a faction in Binding Blade, but never really explored. And you can see Lynn on image 11. Lynn, in her campaign, learns that she is actually the heir to another Marquess, and in the process of returning to her kingdom, she is attacked by invaders, and so she fights off the invading force and reclaims her throne. The only like connecting through line here is at one point she rescues a bard named Nils, who later turns out to be a half dragon. Classic.
Cool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna joke, but classic is the right way to put that. Like classically, that is what happens here.
Yeah.
So part 2 is Eliwood's campaign. So 1 year later, Eliwood's father goes missing. And again, this is 15 years prior to Binding Blade, so Eliwood is not the leader yet. He's just another dude. Eliwood enlists the help of his friend Hector of the nearby kingdom of Ostia. The two of them travel out. They amass an army, blah, 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 blah. They rescue another mysterious girl who turns out to be a half-dragon as well.
Say it with me.
So images 12 and 13 are Eliwood and Hector, respectively.
Eliwood is just Roy.
He's just different Roy.
Just
it's just
Roy.
different Roy.
Imagine, like, and that's the thing, guys. Like, we knew none of this in 2003. Like, when Kyle and I opened our copies of Fire Emblem for the GBA, we're like, yay, I get to finally play as my favorite character, Roy. Who's Eliwood?
Yeah. Like, I assumed for a while it was just like a localization thing. It was like, they changed his name to Eliwood.
And I never finished the game to learn what mattered.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Because again, like these games are hard. I think I got to Hector's campaign, like mission 3 of Hector's campaign, which is the third part.
I got decently far because I had the strategy guide. That would be on turn 7, 4 more bad things will show up and ruin your life. So be ready for that.
And that's the thing. Like when you talk about difficulty, it's you could look at a battle and be like, well, I can like navigate this, right? But that's the thing is Fire Emblem does this thing where like reinforcements come, or you might like you'll get baited into a trap, and all of a sudden like a bunch of dudes appear and just fucking kill you out of nowhere.
Yeah.
There's also shit like enemies can crit and one shot you based on a bad roll of the dice. Like this is how these games work.
Yep.
And battles take hours.
It's like it's a commitment, especially in this era of the game.
In this era. Yeah. Which is why these were always on handhelds, because you could pause and you'd have to like you do a couple turns while you're pooping and then like save it and come back. So the Eliwood and Hector meet up with Lynn. There is a little bit of a through line here. And they learn the same group that she fought off in Sakai is responsible for Eliwood's father's disappearance. That group is being led by a sorcerer named Nurgle.
I definitely got to Nurgle. I remember Nurgle.
Do we have a picture of Nurgle?
We don't, but you can go for it. Look it up.
It's just the gray cat from Garfield.
Nurgle wants to use the 2 half-dragon kids to open a portal to lead dragons into a leap. The party heads to Bern and saves the antagonist from Binding Blade from an assassination attempt, which is kind of cool. This is the through line to show that this was a prequel. This then leads the Queen of Bern to hand them the Blazing Blade Durandal and the Thunder Axe Armans to use against Nurgle. So there's the Binding Blade, and then the Blazing Blade, which is Durandal, which Roy later finds in the older game. Together, they fight off Nurgle and the dragons that he summoned, and in the epilogue, Eliwood and Hector are both made marquises of their respective kingdoms, and they introduce their children, Roy and Lilina, to each other, who, like I said, will eventually marry and lead Frey.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got the third and final GBA game, Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. So Sacred Stones was the first that was developed with the expectation that it would be released internationally. So now we're at the point where like they're just releasing all these games across international or across the world.
It's a worldwide sensation now.
Yeah. That's right. Sacred Stones introduced some mechanics that would soften the difficulty, like optional battles for grinding EXP and money. Because one other thing I didn't mention is Fire Emblem, you only fight in those scripted battles. So it's not like an RPG where you can just grind, right?
Yeah.
Like you only have so many turns where you could get stat increases. And here's the thing, like, so when you level up, your units all like increase their stats. Stat increases are random.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So you can just like, you could level up and just be fucked and get like +1 in luck.
Yep.
Jeez.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's what that's what makes these games so hard. You could do everything right and just like get bad RNG.
Yep.
It's like
Just be like,
Mario
oh.
Party up in here.
Right.
Yeah, man. So Sacred Stones introduced grinding and said like, okay, well, you
can
can
go
do
to
some side
an
quests
arena,
and you go to an arena level, get some higher numbers, whatever. But still kept in permadeath and everything else. Another thing they added was the idea of branching class changes. So every character since the first game has classes and they can grow into new classes. But now what they do in more of the modern games is you have an archer, they can turn into like an archer a ranger that rides a horse, or like an assassin, or a sniper rather, which has bigger range.
Which is like
it's like
Archer
trade-offs.
Plus. Yeah.
Yeah, Archer Plus. So the gimmick for Sacred Stones is you play as one of two protagonists, and certain parts in the story, the game will branch out in different paths, kind of like Gaiden, but more. So the story is Sacred Stones takes place in another brand new continent called Magvel, which has not been revisited since. Magvel is comprised of 6 nations. And long ago, 5 of those 6 nations were each put in charge of one of the 5 sacred stones, which were used to seal away the Demon King for Mortis, following a 800-year-long war. The game begins when Graldo, one of those 5 nations, attacks Renai, which is home to royal siblings Ephraim and Erica, and they are shown in image 14.
Unique
This game
names
begins
everywhere.
begins when Noun attacks Noun, home of Noun and Noun.
It's a fucking Mad Lib, y'all. Like, I swear to God.
Wild.
I did not realize all of these games had the exact same story. And this is about the point where I was like, are you kidding me?
I'm sorry.
So-
I've fully lost count. What game is this? Like, what number?
We are on number 8.
Damn, we're not even
FE8.
halfway there.
Wow.
Damn.
So after Renai falls, the 2 siblings are separated and each go about their way, building a resistance against Graldo, fighting bandits and building armies along the way. As they do this, they learn that Graldo intends to take the remaining stones and resurrect the Demon King. This is because the leader of Graldo, Prince Lion, has become a puppet at the will of Formortis, who was released upon his using Graldo's stones to attempt to resurrect his dead father. Doesn't really matter. Erica and Ephraim gather up what remaining stones are left and then confront Lion, who of course successfully resurrects Formortis. So the twins learn that the sacred stones were inside them all along.
There it is.
We are the sacred stones.
Good.
Yep, and then they seal Formortis up, even though they only have like 2 sacred stones. Doesn't matter. So that's Sacred Stones. We've got 2 more console games, which are the Radiant series, which earlier, Matt, you asked, like, you said, oh, this is the Double Dash. This is the Double Dash.
Oh, okay, got it.
This is Ike's series.
This is Ike. So Fire Emblem Path of Radiance came out for the GameCube in 2005. This was Fire Emblem's first foray into 3D and the first console entry since Thracia back on the Super Famicom. So Fire Emblem was never on the N64 in US or Japan. Along with the 3D, it was also a first for animated cutscenes with full video and voice acting. Unfortunately, due to rush development and a bunch of weird mechanics, like they did this thing with like unit biorhythm where it was just like if they were feeling anxious, they would perform bad.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Added-
I have anxiety in real life. I don't need it in my games.
They put some Tamagotchi in your Fire Emblem.
Yeah,
Gross.
exactly. So because of a bunch of things, Path of Radiance was even less successful than 3CA was in Japan. Also being on the GameCube didn't help. See also Double Dash.
Yeah.
Patron of this episode, Derek Harper, loved this game. It might have been the first one he beat. I think
I
he
do
beat
not
this.
like these games.
He loves this game,
Yeah.
and I think it beat it.
I
on
had
the
this one,
GameCube.
and I don't remember getting past like 4 missions.
I did not play a lot of it, but Derek sure did.
I dipped out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But there are people that love it. And this is actually, so like Matt, this may be for you. This is one of the biggest, like when you talk about GameCube collector's items, a copy of Path of Radiance will net you a couple bucks.
Huh. Okay, got it.
So Path of Radiance takes place in another new setting called Tilius. This world is comprised of 2 sentient races, the humanoid Beorks, humans, and the shape-shifting Laguz. Laguz, Laguz, I guess. The 2 races coexist in this kind of tenuous harmony across the 7 nations of Tilius. Path of Radiance stars Ike, our first non-royal protagonist and member of the Grail Mercenaries. And hey, Image 15, it's Ike from Smash.
Hey, I know that guy too.
It's like,
Yeah, you sure do. Ike and his friends are hanging out finding bandits until you guessed it, a neighboring nation named Dayan invades his home state of Crimea. He lives in Crimea and he's annexed. It doesn't feel right.
It feels that hits a little differently here in 2022.
Yeah,
Sure
I
does.
literally was writing this and I was like, was this motherfucker annexed from Crimea? God damn it. Feels bad. Ike and his band of mercenaries find the Crimean princess Ilincia, who is lying unconscious in a forest, and together they are forced to flee to the Laguz nation of Gallia. Ike and his friends then begin to fight against the Syria's most deadly enemy yet, underlying racial tension.
Ah,
I mean,
Wow.
It's a different kind of bad aside from an undead dragon being brought back to life.
In addition to the annexation of Crimea, Path of Radiance deals with genocide and racial tensions and white privilege.
wow. All these buzzwords still relevant 12 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too. I don't like these games. Ike and the Crimean princess help to broker an alliance against Dane between the resisting Beork nations and the Laguz tribes, who were, like I said, brutally genocided by their ancestors in ages past. As these things tend to go, it's revealed that Dane is attempting to release the dark deity sealed within Leirun's medallion. Leirun's medallion is Telius's version of the Fire Emblem.
Ding.
Dang.
Yeah.
But Ike and the rest of the Grail mercenaries stop their leader from doing that. And after the battle, Ilincia is crowned Queen of Crimea and dedicates herself to building peace between the 2 races. And that dovetails directly into Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, which was released for the Wii in 2008. Radiant Dawn is a direct sequel to Path of Radiance. Thank you. And the game even allows you to transfer over save data, which is kind of cool, like a Mass Effect 2 thing. Physical copies of Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance are both worth a ton to collectors. This is another one. Radiant Dawn changed up the support system again, where units no longer had. So I mentioned before, like certain units had these like pre-designated levels because they wrote all of the copy for them, right?
Yeah.
In Radiant Dawn, they got rid of all that and they just said, "Yeah, you can just support with whomever." But because of that, they shortcutted it and just wrote like little Mad Libs for people. So it was like, "Hello, fellow soldier, how are you today?" Great. And people fucking hated it. Cool. Because support conversations are like half the reason why you play Fire Emblem.
It's the anime. It's the really anime side of the game.
Yeah. Like it's the anime side of the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Yeah.
This also had some challenges. So did your brother play this one? Did you guys play this one, Kyle?
If he played it, I'm not sure. I dropped off of gaming for about a year and a half because I left for college, and
this was my dark
left
period, and by that I mean I only played Guitar Hero and Halo.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I hit that same period in college 2 years later. Like once the fun of being a freshman wore off,
Exactly.
But I missed this. Yes.
Yeah. So there was a weird thing with a translation error. So this one got terrible reviews because so most Fire Emblem games have normal, hard, and insane, or like insidious or whatever, like punish me, daddy, difficult. and for whatever reason, there was a weird translation error that they changed the difficulties to easy, normal, and hard.
Okay.
So everybody who chose normal didn't realize they were actually playing it on hard mode.
Yeah,
it's like a reverse Mega Man 2.
American Ego wouldn't allow anyone to start from easy, so they all started on actually hard mode. And
exactly.
Oh, I see.
So everybody playing this, like everybody reviewing this, was like, "Why is this game so fucking hard?" It was not intended to be played that way the first run through. Because that's the other thing. Fire Emblem games, like you don't play on hard the first run through because you have to know who does what and like how to grow your team and who matches with who. Like hard is for your second playthrough.
Yeah.
So obviously this game sold even worse than Path of Radiance, and its failure put Fire Emblem in critical condition. Basically Intelligence Systems or Nintendo was like, "Yo, like you can't do consoles anymore. You got to go back to handheld.
You're in
like,
timeout.
we can't keep doing
personal
this."
development plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Fire Emblem, since 2008, Fire Emblem would not appear on console again until Three Houses a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yep. So the story of Radiant Dawn is honestly dumb. I even writing it, I was like, what the fuck? So after following Path of Radiance, you've got Dane or Dian, Daein. It's just a bunch of vowels. Dane.
Yeah.
Dane is left without a leader. So Dane is taken over and annexed by another bordering nation, the Begnion Empire. A group of resistance fighters within Dane, calling themselves the Dawn Brigade, emerge and are led by protagonist Micaiah. So this is our second female protagonist, second from Celica. And that's Image 16.
Third-ish if you count Lynn, but yeah.
Oh yeah, Lynn. Okay, Lynn counts. That's you're right. Micaiah is also our first magic user protagonist. So until that point, it's always been sword melee characters, sword boys and axe
sword boys. Yeah.
Yeah. So Micaiah is our first mage protagonist, which is kind of neat. Micaiah and her team travel across Dane, fighting back against the Begnion invaders, liberating soldiers, yada yada yada. During this whole time, they come across the rightful heir to Dane's throne, Prince Peleus, whose scheming assistant tricks him into signing an agreement that will make a bunch of Dane citizens explode by way of this literal blood pact.
What?
Oh,
okay.
Unclear why, but this blood pact that he signed will make a bunch of people explode at some point once triggered.
Whack.
Okay.
It sounds like the plot to a bad rock opera.
Yeah.
It's not good.
You've got a real South Park episode where that guy's brother sings the high note and everybody explodes.
I mean, kind of, yeah. So, meanwhile, there's an insurgency in Crimea. Remember Crimea not from the news, but from the last game? There's an insurgency that culminates with an attack on the palace. But fortunately, Ike and his Grail mercenaries appear to save the day. And after that, the Lagus Alliance, which is now the collection of all the... Did I mention the Lagus are shapeshifters? They're just different animal people. Like there's a bird. There's a birdman.
I do remember that from the little bit I played.
There's a birdman nation and a wolfman nation.
Yeah.
All right.
So the Lagus Alliance hires Grail and informs Ike that Begnion is basically doing a World War I, but instead of assassinating Archduke Ferdinand, they're framing a shape-shifting birdman.
Oh,
it's really a 1-to-1
Pretty
ratio.
much.
You just exchange them.
little known fact about Archduke Ferdinand.
Archduke Birdman Ferdinand.
That's what they called him.
So this is, when you said the Fire Emblem is a song, that's this game. So Micaiah.
I never said that, and no one ever said that. And we
Kyle
should
said
say
that.
no.
I said that in
yeah,
the
he said
Fire
that.
Emblem episode where
I'm
I
telling
destroy the
you.
world with dragons.
I'm telling you for a
There's
fact.
no war
there
in
is-
Ba Sing Se?
Yeah, there is no game where the
Yeah.
Fire Emblem is a song.
So what happens is Micaiah sings into the medallion that I mentioned in the last, and I don't know why, but her doing that summons Yune, who is considered to be the dark god of chaos.
And is also a dragon.
No.
Okay, that's
So-
a surprise to me.
Yeah,
I
I'm
wasn't
surprised.
prepared for
twist.
that to be the
A
answer.
twist Todd wasn't
A
expecting.
twist, he says. So Yune reveals that they aren't actually evil, just pure chaos, like Kirby. So
I've seen that like justification pop up from time to time that like chaos isn't evil, and in this case it's
Yeah.
going to be the protagonist because too much order is also
Yeah.
bad.
well, that's what happens. So much like Kirby, Yune takes over, just straight up takes over Micaiah's body.
Much
but
like Kirby, yeah.
Much like Kirby.
Remember when Kirby
but-
did that?
Yeah, but Yune being summoned also causes the yang to Yune's yin, which is the god of order, Ashera, to appear. And Ashera basically says, "You guys suck. I'm going to petrify everybody," and just turns everybody to stone, aside from all of the half-breed Lagoos and the main characters.
Nice.
Conveniently.
Okay.
Yep. So Ike, Micaiah, Yune, and the rest of the band confront Ashera in the Tower of Guidance, and a bunch of people reveal that they're actually other people. And honestly, I stopped here. I couldn't anymore with this one. God dies and the other god restores peace. End credits. Move on. This one sucks.
What do you think the song is that Micaiah sings into the Fire Emblem?
It's the Super Smash Bros. Theme. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da.
Because the only plot song I can think of is South Park's Imagination Land summoning song. Imagination.
Pretty much. All right, so we're going to cut to break here in just a second. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the DS. There are no actual mainline games on the DS, just remakes. So this was really like Intelligence Systems. Just to know the history, Intelligence Systems was like, fuck, we got to like do something here. So Intelligence Systems was like, let's remake the original for an international audience. So in 2009, they released Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, just Shadow Dragon. Which was into the DS for all audiences, and this was a remake. It basically is like it's just the original story with Marth, but like pulling in the weapons triangles and skills and class changes and all that stuff from the modern games, except for supports. And do you know the one thing that Fire Emblem fans like? It's supports. And they fucking hated this game. There he is. Kyle just pulled up his copy of Shadow Dragon.
I have my cartridge. Yeah.
And this game, I played most of this game. It's fine. It's very okay. It's mechanically fine, technically fine, but has no supports, and it's just like kind of whatever.
The biggest criticism I remember of it was like a little dry. Like
It's dry
kind of
because the story was written in 1999, and it was boring and bland.
a return to form after the GameCube ones, but a little dry, which was
And then the other DS game was another remake called New Mystery of the Emblem. And just like Shadow Dragon before it, this was a remake of the Famicom's Mystery of the Emblem, but this was only released in Japan for whatever reason. So we still have never gotten Mystery of the Emblem. This also included the Satellaview episodes and brought back supports, but reception for this one was still pretty lukewarm. The only other thing I'll say for this was this game introduced a mechanic called My Unit, which was a player-controlled avatar, a self-insert, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
So you could customize your avatar and kind of play in the FE world.
It's
And
like that Sonic game where you make your own Sonic
it's
character.
like that
It's
Sonic
exactly
game
like
where you
that
make your
Sonic
own
game.
Sonic character.
Yes.
So we're gonna cut to break, but at this point, just to kind of set the scene, Nintendo was like done with Fire Emblem.
This was insane. What?
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that no new releases came out on the DS is insane
Yep.
to me. Like
It's
that's how
wild.
bad the GameCube killed the brand for a minute. Because the DS is like the highest selling gaming system ever.
It's wild. And there were 2 DS games, Advance Wars games on DS, and they did fine.
Yes. Like this is the highest selling system ever, and they didn't put out a new entry for this.
They didn't put out a new
franchise
entry.
on it.
Nintendo was done with this thing.
Yeah.
And the only thing breathing life into it was Brawl came out and, hyped up Ike. That's about it. So basically, intelligence systems, they went to intelligence systems and were like, look, dog, like you get one more. Like you get one more, and we are putting the kibosh on thing. We're putting this in the Metroid bin, baby.
Oh no, not the Metroid bin.
I think the more accurate is the Captain Falcon series.
F-Zero.
That was
Yeah,
the
F-Zero.
F-Zero bin.
I was
Chibi
going to
Robo.
say the Star Fox bin.
Yeah,
That's
that's
actually
it.
a pretty big bin at Nintendo.
It's a
There's a
big
lot
bin
of
at
things in
Nintendo.
that bin.
It's a deep
So
bin.
when we come back from break, we're going to talk about the rebirth or awakening of Fire Emblem.
You stop it. You're a bad man.
These movies are hot.
My name is T2756. Would you like to have sex with me now for money?
You know what? Honestly, cool.
These movies are bloody.
I was feeling a lot braver before I knew there was going to be murder and then threats of murder.
Oh yeah, I mean, you didn't think you could go to Texas Instruments without murdering someone, did you?
These movies are audio only. Worst Movies Ever Played is back with 3 new VHS movies for your ears. Anything can happen in this actual play RPG podcast, and we mean anything.
What did you build that went so poorly a while back?
Oh, I tried to build a girlfriend. Unfortunately, it also became a libertarian.
Those who say of freedom do not beg for it, they simply take it.
Oh, this is a super bummer.
Subscribe to Worst Movies Ever Played wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, so before we went to break, we talked about basically Fire Emblem was like on its deathbed. So Intelligence Systems was told, like, again, you guys have one more chance. Otherwise, we're shutting this whole thing down. We're going the way of Captain Falcon. So
Animal House has one more chance.
exactly, they're put on double secret probation. We have
Dean
one last party
coming for you.
So Intelligence Systems put together a who's who of Fire Emblem devs for like one last job. I mean,
We need
it's
you
really
to come
fun.
out for one last.
God,
one
I
last
love that
mission.
so
They did
much.
they did the commando thing.
Matt-
They showed up
Matt,
in the middle of the forest with
They nailed
Schwarzenegger.
it. Like
Yeah.
they did
They
it.
fucking nailed it. God, Fire Emblem Awakening is so fucking good.
It-
I love this game. Love it.
If you are at all curious, like we'll get into it, but if you are at all curious of playing this series, Awakening is like the easiest place to start.
Yeah.
And Matt, you can buy it on the 3DS for one more day before the eShop
right.
shuts down.
Yeah, that's why I'm just downloading a bunch of shit before it shuts down. Anyway, so the story behind Awakening's development is really cool too. I'll just give you a couple highlights. So, they, like I said, they basically were like, let's boil this thing down to its core mechanics. Like, what do people like about Fire Emblem? Because at this point too, the series was very stale. All of those GBA games, like, they hadn't changed anything. So they took this thing.
The GBA was the old formula made American, basically.
Made American. Yeah. That was the biggest change of the series for years. So they really they stripped everything down, all the parts down, and were like, what works, what doesn't. There's also some funny things, like apparently they considered making like a modern, like a Persona, like in modern Tokyo.
Oh,
they
that
also,
would be so
right?
rad, though.
They also almost did Fire Emblem Awakening in space.
Oh,
Yeah, like literally almost happened. But then they decided, like, no, let's make this a celebration of Fire Emblem's history. So that's what they did. So it really, like, Awakening is kind of an amalgamation of all of the best of Fire Emblem.
it's a best of, yeah.
It's a best of. So and with that, they brought back the support structure in full because it was gone with the DS games. But not only did they bring supports, they brought back the marriage and kid mechanic from Genealogy, which people loved.
Because we
Yep.
need that
They brought
child
back-
army.
We need that child army, baby.
Todd, we need waifus and husbandos.
And
is
and
what
most
it is.
importantly, they made it horny.
They made
There it
it
is.
really horny.
Is it?
I was
is it
waiting
pronounced-
for the turn to come.
Is it pronounced husbandos or husbandos? Because in
I've
my mind,
always
it's
said-
husbandos.
I've always said husbandos. And boy howdy, the protagonist of this game is the archetypical husbando. So we've got weapon triangles are here. We've got branching promotions, class swapping, combat supports. They brought back the My Unit avatar in a big way. but we've also got ways to, and this is the most, probably one of the more important things is this game is accessible because they finally figured out the difficulty. So they introduced two things. One, they introduced casual mode, which casual mode is one of the more debated topics.
Controversial changes. Yes.
Casual mode turns off permadeath, which I am a big casual mode stan because I hate spending an hour on a battle just to get somebody killed by a shitty crit one shot by
in the last fight. Yeah.
In the last round. So I'm fine with it. But not only that, you could also pick the difficulty and do casual and classic.
Yeah.
So you could really have this sliding scale of difficulty.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to just experience the story, you can. If you want the punishing Fire Emblem experience, you can have that too. Everybody gets what they want. The developers also took advantage of the new 3DS hardware. This came out in 3DS. This was probably one of the most successful 3DS games.
Yeah.
If that isn't Pokemon or New Super Mario Bros.
Yeah.
And they farmed out for these beautifully designed like 3D anime cutscenes. Kyle's showing it here.
I got my card for this one too.
And it's also got full voice acting, featuring Matt Mercer and Laura Bailey from Critical Role.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Those are big names for
Those are big names.
They weren't at the time, but they are.
Yeah, this is 2013.
Yeah.
And
Who
they
does
also
Matt Mercer play?
He's Crom.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
Laura Bailey's Lucina. So they beefed up all the customization options, and they also included like cinematic camera views and dynamic music. So you'd hear like the level music, but when you go into a battle, it's like dun 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 dun, and it's like it's a dynamic like fight version of it. It's really cool. Makes it a lot more cinematic.
This is a very cinematic game. Yeah.
Awakening was Nintendo's first foray into paid DLC in Japan. First game ever that would have paid DLC. Again, this is 2012 in Japan. By the time we got Awakening, they had already done New Super Mario Bros. 2 paid DLC and a couple other ones. But still, like very early strategy for paid DLC. So the whole thing with Awakening, in order to keep the franchise alive, Awakening would have had to sell 250 copies in Japan. It did that in a week.
Woo!
Nice.
The success
250,000.
250,000.
Yeah.
It sold that in a week. Its success internationally blew through the ceiling of expectations. There hadn't been to this point, not a single Fire Emblem game had sold over 1 million copies. Not even like the GBA one. Awakening to date has sold over 2.5 million copies.
Wow.
Wow.
And got near perfect review scores. So it, again, incredibly successful. Just complete, like, this is the Breath of the Wild of Fire Emblem.
Yep.
So Awakening returns us to the world of Arcanea, which was Marth's world, but is set 2,000 years after Fire Emblem 1. So it's no longer called Arcanea. This land is called Ylisse. Ylisse. I've never said that out loud. I think it's Ylisse, maybe. Let's say Ylisse. It expounds on Arcanea's creation myth about the dragon god Naga. So dragon god Naga is the Bahamut of this world, the good dragon god.
Yeah.
Naga created Falchion and the Fire Emblem, and it was Naga who chose an hero in ancient times to wield Falchion and take down the ancient fell dragon Grima, who's like our Tiamat. So we've got good dragon, bad dragon. Ylisse is split between the Halidom of Ylisse, who worships the good dragon Naga, and the kingdom of Plagia, who worships the bad dragon Grima.
I love that there is a whole nation that worships the evil dragon.
Evil dragon.
Like, and at no point is anyone in the lower ranks like.
And if you look at any character portraits, they all look like they all look like villains.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's very great. The two nations had been locked in a bitter war until about 15 years prior. So the Halidom of Ylisse is ruled by Exalt Emerin, whose brother is her kind of like her enforcer and our primary protagonist, Crom. Hey guys, it's Crom from Smash.
Hey, I know
Crom.
that guy.
Image 17 is Crom from Smash.
What's up with Crom's boots?
What do you mean?
He's got two different. One's shadowy. Todd.
Oh, he do have two different boots.
One's in shadow.
Well, no,
Just
one's like
depth
very
of
white.
field.
He can't tell his left from his right, Todd, so he wears mismatched boots so he knows which one is which.
He gets a lot of leg sweeps on his left leg exclusively.
Makes sense. Well, he was riding his bicycle and he didn't want the right leg to get caught in the chain.
Yeah.
Yep. One day, Crom meets a mysterious man/woman in a forest who calls themselves Robin. Robin is the avatar of the player and can be made male or female and can be just whatever class you want them to be. They can look however you want them to look. Robin has amnesia because, of course, they do. Image 18,
so
hey,
that you can map any personality traits you need to onto Robin.
Your
Yes.
self-insert.
Yeah.
Image 18, hey, it's Robin from Smash.
Oh, I know. Where
Hey,
this
I
is
know
going.
that them.
That's right. You know that they them. So Robin is the next iteration of the My Unit avatar feature, and the avatar feature is how all of the modern Fire Emblem games play. So instead of playing a nameless like strategist, you actually play as an avatar that like hangs out and gets to bang all of the characters.
Who is
is.
like still the primary strategist? Like they talk to you as like they talk
it's
to
weird.
your character as like
It's very hand wavy because it's
good
like
job
Robin
leading us through that fight, Robin.
Yeah, it's like Robin, tell us where to go, but like Robin is like on the battlefield. It doesn't matter.
And also, Robin
So-
wants to bone everyone.
Oh, my Robin boned down hard on Crom. Oh, they went to Bone Zone like fucking immediately. So Crom and Robin and his gang of hired guns that he calls the Shepherds go around saving villages that are being ransacked by zombies, as you do, until they are informed of an assassination attempt on the Exalt Emmeryn.
It's a different fictional property.
on Crom's sister. So Crom, Robin, and their team go to intervene. They, along with Emmeryn, are saved by a mysterious swordsman who calls themselves Marth. And everyone says, that's impossible. Marth died. The god king
2,000
Marth died 2,000 years ago.
ago.
Marth also claims that they could see the future.
Neat.
Later, Pelagian forces kidnap Emmeryn while she is in their borders on a diplomatic mission, trying to prevent yet another war. Pelagian's leader, Gangrel, tells Crom to hand over the Fire Emblem in exchange for his sister's life, because the Fire Emblem is something that their family has. Crom is about to agree when Emmeryn leaps off of a cliff, and thus begins Crom's campaign against Pelagia.
That legit, like
That
I was
scene is-
mouth agape when when I got to that scene.
Yeah,
that was
it's pretty
so
sad.
good. Yeah,
and it's a full cutscene, so you get to you can see all the all the stuff happen. It's really cool. So much like a lot of these games, there's a part 1, part 2. Part 1 ends with Crom and the Shepherds defeating Gangrel and restoring peace. Basically, they do it. They do the thing. Crom marries one of the female units, and they have a baby girl that they name Lucina.
ding.
Ding. So this is this brings back. Remember, I said this brought back the family aspect. So, in part 1, in this game, there's a time skip. There's a time skip. It's not actually a time skip. I'll explain in a bit. Really, what you need to understand is all of the units that you get in part 1 can bang each other.
Yep.
Of course.
And you play as your avatar, Robin, can be male or female, and you can bang anybody you want. The thing about Fire Emblem, and they're getting a little bit better about it. It was very anti-gay.
It's
So
very very heteronormative.
It's very
which-
very heteronormative,
It's Japan.
which is a Japanese thing.
That's a hard bridge for them to cross.
3 houses breached that, some not enough in my opinion, but some. But still, at this point, it's male and female only. I played female Robin and boned down on Crom. Crom, though, so Crom is basically Marth, right? He is kind of the embodiment of Marth. He's kind of Marth reincarnated. He's got blue hair, he's got the sword, he's got falchion, right? And his canon marriage is to, and what they did was a lot of the original units are recreations of the units from the first Fire Emblem.
Yep.
So you get there's Cain and Abel, who are the red-headed knight and the green-haired knight. You get a red-headed knight and a green-headed knight. You also get a frail Pegasus knight, who instead of Kata is I forget her name.
I don't know any of the names.
But she's also Crom's canon love interest. So they bring back a lot of things from the original Fire Emblem. So part 2, then we get a little bit of a time skip. It's 2 years later. So part two starts 2 years later. A new invader appears in the form of Emperor Valhart from the neighboring Valm. This Marth character appears again to Crom and reveals that she's actually Crom's daughter from a future where Grima was resurrected. She explains that she used the good dragon god Naga's magic to bring her and her team back to this timeline to prevent Grima's resurrection. That sounds very weird and Back to the Future-y, but it's actually really touching.
It's Trunks.
She's Trunks. Yeah, she's future Trunks.
Yeah.
But it's actually really touching because she explains that Crom died in her timeline, and like she's meeting Crom for the first time, which is like
that is.
We're doing a flashpoints, huh?
Yeah, kinda. It's a flashpoint.
It's a flashpoint. It's a DBZ.
Image 19 is Lucina from Smash.
Oh, hey, I know that girl.
So that's Crom's daughter, Lucina, who comes back in time, does the Trunks, comes back in time as an adult. And but this is where the genealogy child mechanic comes back, because Lucina, much like Seliph in genealogy, Lucina runs a band of children from Crom's team, basically. You pair up Crom's team, and then once you reach S rank supports with either like any unit, they immediately fall in love, and then their child falls through a time distortion portal in a side quest.
All right,
and you get to recruit them.
Yeah.
I think
It's
this
great.
was the exact plot of one of the new like 2017 era Terminator movies, but I'm not sure.
Probably. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So in order to save Ylisse, Crom has to collect the 5 gems to set in the Fire Emblem and perform the Awakening to acquire Naga's power. Do you guys remember what the Fire Emblem does?
It summons
dragon?
the dragon
Dragon.
apocalypse.
It summons Tiki, the dragon. So that's what they do.
Yep.
Together, they collect the gems, but while they're getting the 5th one, the new ruler of Plagia named Valadar reveals the plan all along. He reveals that, remember how I said Robin is amnesiac? Mm-hmm. Well, Valadar reveals that Robin is Valadar's child, and more importantly, Robin was created to be the vessel for Grima, because we gotta resurrect an ancient dragon god.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I did not get this far.
Oh, sorry, I'm spoiling.
No,
the ending
you're
for you.
fine.
So
it's a 10-year-old game.
yeah, so Valadar takes control of Robin to forcibly hand him the completed Fire Emblem, and Lucina pieces together at this point that Robin was in fact the one who killed Crom in her timeline.
Oh.
And so I mentioned, so this is where this branches off a little bit, because my Robin married Crom, but if you're playing male Robin, you can't marry Crom. And I think male Robin in this game is canon Robin.
Yeah.
So Lucina tries to kill Robin, but she can't kill Robin if Robin is her mother. It's very cool.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I
Huh.
never saw this. Regardless, Crom intervenes either way, so like she doesn't kill Robin. But because of this whole Lucina bit, Robin basically is able to like play it off like she's under Valadar's control, but they do a Back to the Future 3 where she reveals that she had a plate under her chest the whole time.
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody got that right.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
for me. I'm
Yep.
there.
Good.
I gotcha.
So
I'm looking
Crom,
up 2 other things while I'm doing this. But
so
yeah.
Crom successfully summons Naga by way of Tiki, who tells him that she can only pause Grima's awakening for another 1,000 years. In order to truly end this, Robin has to deal the finishing blow, which will likely kill them in the process. So in the final battle against Grima, you face off against the dragon, and you, the player, can decide who kills Grima. And if Crom kills Grima, you keep Robin alive, but you perpetuate the cycle. But if Robin kills Grima, Robin dies.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, except they don't.
Well, right.
Well, sure.
Do you know,
So, yeah.
Andrew, who the canon pairing with Robin is? Is there one? It
It's
is
Lucina.
Lucina. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Awakening fucking rips. Like I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah. I'm gonna fire it up as soon as we're done here tonight.
Okay, we got 2 more big ones to talk about. We got Fire Emblem Fates, which was the next 3DS title. It came out in 2015. So following up the massive success of Awakening, Nintendo Intelligence Systems were like, okay, how do we do that? How do we recapture this lightning, but also make it like more narrative focused? So basically, the kind of the goal, the idea here was give the player the choice to side with the light, side with the dark, or kind of take a neutral path. So this idea of these 3 branching paths. So Intelligent Systems got to work immediately after Awakening released. Again, they like basically kept all of the engine. They kept the mechanical differences. They really just focused on narrative story. Fates also did the Pokemon thing and sold the game under 2 full retail versions. So Fates is available under either Conquest or Birthright.
I have Birthright.
And I have Conquest.
Nice.
So Conquest,
You guys can trade to get each other's Caterpie or
yeah,
wheels.
to get,
Yep.
exactly. To get our boob Caterpies and boob wheel. Conquest has you aligning with the Western Nor Empire, and Birthright has you aligning with the Eastern Kingdom of Hoshido. But unlike Pokemon, they're not the same game.
No.
They're completely different games,
Yeah.
and you're actually supposed to play both paths.
Yeah.
Which then gets us to the third path, which is called Revelation,
Oh.
in which Corrin, main character, doesn't ally with either and instead goes it on her own way. And it's basically the end story of Sonic Adventure 2. It's like after you've done Light and Dark, you get the real ending. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, Fates uses the same engine. It brings all the same stuff as Awakening. Even brings back the genealogy stuff, the kids thing. And it brought in the only real like new gameplay thing is it brought in My Castle, which is like it kind of allows you to like build and customize a home base. So it's like your interactive menu. It's fine. The original Japanese version also had this cringy petting mechanic.
Ew, what?
Do you remember Poke Ami from X and Y?
Yeah.
You use the stylus to pet your Pokemon.
Yep.
Yeah, the Japanese version of Fates had that, but with people.
You could have just said Nintendogs.
Yeah.
No, I guess Nintendo.
Could have said Nintendogs, but I understood what he meant.
It still makes me mad. Whatever.
Yeah,
It's
I
gross.
still love it.
That's
Fortunately,
real
it was-
upsetting.
Yeah, fortunately, it doesn't exist in our version.
Because
It was
Fates
removed
definitely has the 1,000-year-old dragon and a 10-year-old girl body character.
Fates is defo the horniest one.
Yeah. It's
So
bad.
Yikes.
this game sold even better than Awakening with a whopping 3 million copies.
Wow.
Now, to be fair, part of that might be the fact that you need to buy 3 physical copies to finish this game.
Yeah.
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 But still, like, it did very well. So I'll quickly go through the story. So Fates takes place on a new continent that is home to 2 warring nations. Like I said, the feudal Japan-themed Kingdom of Hoshido and the Roman-themed Nor Empire. Birthright is Hoshido. Conquest is Nor. Hoshido is good. Nor is bad. I'm air quoting there.
Yeah.
All 3 games, though, begin the same. And Revelation has you going neutral, which we'll talk about. All 3 games begin the same. You play as Corrin, one of the 5 children of King Garon of the Norian Empire. Corrin is just like Robin in Awakening in that they can be male, female, whatever. Image 20, hey, it's Corrin from Smash.
Yeah.
Hey, I know them.
You know them.
I'm almost burnt out on this joke now. Holy shit.
I got one more. Corrin is sent by King Garon to investigate a small outpost on the Nor-Hoshido border and is gifted a magical sword to defend themselves. But during this routine mission, Corrin is betrayed by a hired mercenary and thrown into a deep canyon. Corrin wakes up behind enemy lines in the custody of Hoshido. Hoshido, though, strangely enough, doesn't kill or even imprison Corrin. Instead, they're taken to the Hoshidan queen, who reveals to Corrin that they are their long-lost child that was abducted by King Garon long ago during a diplomatic mission, and they're very young. Corrin's Loki.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Hoshidan Queen asks Corrin if they will stay and reconnect with their lost family, and Corrin is torn as they still have 4 very real siblings back home in Nor, which they think they belong to.
Corrin is
You
Torin.
Corrin is torn. While Corrin is in Hoshido's capital, the sword that King Garon gifted them explodes, which is triggered by some magical assassin. Fine. And this sword kills the queen. And this ultimately sends Corrin in a rage, and they transform into a dragon.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Yep. But Corrin is eventually calmed down by this mysterious blue-haired woman named Azura. Azura sings the main song from Fire Emblem Fates and reveals that Azura was actually abducted from Nor by Hoshido in response from Corrin being taken from Hoshido. Cool. So we're doing a parent trap, I guess.
Yep.
So in retaliation, a battle ensues between the two families, and Corrin has to choose who to side with. And this is the big birthright conquest revelation choice. So you could stay with Hoshido or go back to Nor. If Corrin sides with Hoshido, then Corrin leads a campaign to slowly take over the Empire, fighting each of their named siblings along the way, some of which get spared, some of which are killed. In the end, Corrin and Hoshido make it to the Norian capital and face off against Garen, ultimately killing him. Corrin takes the throne and the two nations broker peace. If Corrin sides with Nor, Corrin works alongside their adoptive siblings to change Nor from within. They discover that the King Garen sitting on the throne is actually an imposter and work together with the other nobility to kill him. So it's not the evil.
It's not the good
dark
bad
story.
run, but
No,
it is
no.
the good bad run.
All the while, they're actually fending attacks off from Hoshido. It's revealed that a few of the Hoshidan nobility are in basically running in this. No, they've been controlled by this bloodlust, this insatiable bloodlust. So Corrin's forced to kill them, which of course looks bad and
Sure.
whatever. So at the end, Corrin takes down the false Garen and reclaims the throne for their eldest brother. If Corrin doesn't side with either Nor or Hoshido, they're branded a traitor by both sides, and flee with Azura to the hidden dragon kingdom of Valia. There, Corrin learns of the ancient dragon Anankos, who is the one that has replaced Garen as the false Garen and is responsible for the Hoshidan prince's bloodlust. So Corrin and Azura pulled together members of both sides to band together for the greater good to fight off this big and dragon god threat. Stop me if you've heard this before.
Yeah.
Here is the best part. So while doing so, Corrin combines both families' legendary weapons, because both families have legendary weapons. Together, all of their legendary weapons create the Fire Emblem that is needed to slay Anankos. Azura and Corrin, along with their blood and adopted siblings, defeat the dragon god, and Corrin is crowned the new ruler of Valia, as they are revealed to be one of the draconic descendants of Valia. So that's Fates.
Nice.
After Fates came Shadows of Valentia, which was the last 3DS game, which is a remake of Fire Emblem Gaiden. So in this game, Alm and Celica got glow-ups, and they basically brought back... They used the same story, but brought back a bunch of new mechanics, made it a modern Fire Emblem. They also introduced a rewinding turn mechanic, which would later come back in Three Houses. So
yeah, that's a good addition.
Another way to adjust difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
Is that forget what I did last round?
Yep. So it's rewinding individual turns.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oops, I didn't want that to happen.
So if you still in the last turn get crit one shot, you can move your archer one space away so he doesn't get crit one shot.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So here we are. We are at the last game. We're here, baby. Three Houses. Fire Emblem Three Houses. Released on Switch in 2019. The most recent mainline Fire Emblem game and absolutely most successful in the series, having sold 3.4 million copies to date. How far this series has gone from this little dark horse fans only experiment to now this doesn't seem that impressive. It's the 29th highest selling Switch game. But again, keep in mind, Fire Emblem, that's very good.
Yeah, I mean, top 30 is nothing to shake at either.
Top 30 is nothing to shake at. Three Houses has beat out the likes of Among Us, Metroid Dread, Mario Golf Super Rush, and a bunch of other ones. So pretty good for the Switch library. And really good for a nuanced tactical RPG with a very high skill floor.
Yeah.
And a lot of anime bullshit involved.
A lot of anime bullshit. A lot of ancient dragon gods. So Intelligent Systems actually pulled in Koei Tecmo, who you may remember as the people that do Dynasty Warriors and all the Musou games like Hyrule Warriors.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
I totally remember all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've played all of those fucking games. Koei Tecmo actually wrote a lot of the scenarios for Three Houses, which, surprise, doesn't include... Well, never mind. Koei Tecmo had also had a stake in the game because Koei Tecmo at this time had released Fire Emblem Warriors also on the Switch.
There it is.
Yeah.
Intelligent System. Nope. Three Houses is so Kyle said Awakening is a good entry point. I would say Three Houses is definitely the most approachable Fire Emblem game, but it is so not a Fire Emblem game.
Yeah.
Is the thing. It's very good. I love Three Houses. I have 120 hours clocked in the goddamn game.
It's great. You have to do it has more menuing than most of the other ones.
It's more menuing.
It's a lot. All the stuff that stopped you from getting into Monster Hunter, Matt, it is in this.
Yeah,
like you got to run around and
that stuff
and shake hands and kiss babies in between missions. And
not for me.
It actually like pulls back a lot. Remember like in Gaiden where I was like, oh, they brought a lot of traditional RPG mechanics. A lot of that comes back in Three Houses in a big way.
Yeah.
Got it.
Also, Three Houses removed the iconic weapon triangle. So weapon triangle for the first time was completely gone.
I did not love that.
Yeah. It also kept in the difficulty sliders, casual mode, classic mode. Also reintroduced that turn rewind. So not only do you have like permadeath turn on and off, you can rewind individual turns. So that's why this is definitely the most approachable Fire Emblem game. Yeah. Also, just like you can grind. It also brought back grinding optional missions. You can really overpower your units. Like by halfway through Three Houses, you will be one-shotting every single enemy.
Oh,
basically.
Yeah.
So the gimmick with Three Houses is you play as a war academy professor. Early on in the game, you select from one of three classes, each with their own individual unique protagonist and team of units. Part 1 is essentially the same, albeit with different characters. Part 2 is wildly different and branches based on which class you picked from. The other major gimmick is that the game is split into the combat sections and then the academy sections where you run around in a free mode and get items and give tea and gifts to your anime characters, whatever.
It's like like Danganronpa.
Yeah, like Danganronpa.
It's like Danganronpa, but everything you do like will tweak stats and
Yeah, I mean, like
attraction
any dating sim.
and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like dating sim shit. Yep. So Three Houses takes place in another brand new continent named Fodlan, where the three factions have risen and divided the area up in thirds. You've got the Adrestian Empire in the south, you've got the Kingdom of Fargus, the Holy Kingdom of Fargus in the mountains to the west, and the Leicester Alliance in the desert in the east. You play as Byleth, a mercenary living off the land with their father Geralt. Byleth's past is a mystery, and their eyes are forever unblinking, and they feel nothing. Image 21 is Byleth from Smash.
Ding.
Hey, it's Byleth from Smash.
I know her.
During a routine bandit routing, Byleth encounters three students at the nearby war school in the Garreg Mach Monastery. They are Edelgard von Herlsvelg, the eldest daughter of the Emperor of Adrestia, Claude von Regen, who is heir to the ruling house of the Leicester Alliance, and Prince Dimitri Alexander Blaith of Fargus. They are images 22, 23, and 24, respectively.
I went with Claude in my playthrough that I started.
I've done all three, but I started with Edelgard.
I see.
Byleth, Edelgard is my queen forever and always. Byleth and Geralt save the royals, and together they all head to Garreg Mach, where Byleth is immediately handed a job as a war professor by the imposing head of the church.
Perfect.
As you do. The head of the church, Archbishop Rhea. Byleth is instructed to choose to lead one of the three classes, each corresponding to one of Fodlan's three factions. So you've got the Black Eagles, who represent Adrestia, the Golden Deer, who represent Leicester, and the Blue Lions, who represent Fargus. During part 1, Byleth and their chosen class find themselves caught in the middle of a conspiracy against the church that leading Byleth to receive the Sword of the Creator, which is a powerful like chain whip sword, like kind of like how Ivy has in Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
This sword was once wielded by a figure named Nemesis, a notorious historical figure who once attempted to overthrow the goddess Saros many, many centuries prior. Byleth can wield this powerful sword, as they are also revealed to hold the mysterious Crest of Flames, a powerful bloodline connected to Nemesis.
An emblem of flames.
Crest is a synonym for emblem.
A fire emblem, if you will.
Great. Good Lord.
So part of this whole game's thing is the history of this world is there are noble bloodlines that inherit these crests, and these crests wield unimaginable power. And the entire game's like this world's like economy and social structure is based on these crests, essentially. And so the figure behind this whole conspiracy is this mysterious Flame Emperor, a figure clad all in armor who is working with some other shady characters that have a penchant for turning innocent townspeople into demonic monsters, as you do.
As one does.
At one point, one of the Flame Emperor's allies murders Geralt, and Byleth leads a revenge mission to mow this group of shady characters down.
Because where would our hero be without a dead family member to call them to action?
Except
Agent Coulson left.
Except Intelligence Systems was very clear to not make Byleth have any emotion. So even like when their father dies, they still are like eyes unblinking, face stoic.
I am sad now.
Yeah. Later, Byleth and their students are called in to defend the church basement from a group of assassins that are led by the Flame Emperor. They're trying to steal some crest stones. It doesn't matter. In a dramatic reveal, we learn that the Flame Emperor was Edelgard all along.
Oh no!
Oh,
yeah. So this game is the first to deal with a protagonist that turns to be the antagonist.
Oh, cool!
I cannot believe that is the first time in the series that is happening. I cannot believe it.
May I remind you that until
they
this
didn't
game,
mess with the formula for 8 games.
Yeah,
So.
this is the first time Intelligence Systems didn't write a game. So Byleth. So then there's one last mission in part 1, and this is Byleth basically leading the people, the kids in Garreg Mog Monastery in one last stand against Edelgard and her forces attacking the church. In the midst of that attack, though, Edelgard loses. Byleth disappears and wakes up 5 years later. Time skip.
Okay.
All right.
So then we get to part 2, and this gives you the out to date your students because because they are no longer your students. They are now fully formed adults that all have glow ups.
Because you blipped for 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And you blipped for 5 years, so you haven't aged at all. So now you're mysteriously their same age.
That sucks. That just straight up sucks. Dude.
It's very almost fine.
I'm not so sure that it is.
Part 2, like I said, is very different based on the faction that you pick. If you go with the Blue Lions, then Byleth reunites with a nearly sociopathic Dimitri, who also now has an eye patch to show that time has passed.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Those
There
were
it
the
is.
vibes I was picking up off of Dimitri.
Yeah, his whole thing is he's got like a lust for vengeance, and he's basically like a shitty Bruce Wayne.
Shitty Batman.
Yeah, Byleth eventually leads Dimitri and the rest of the Fargus classmates in a campaign to reclaim Dimitri's territory from Adrestia and ultimately confront and defeat Edelgard. So it's the war between Fargus v. Adrestia. If you pick the Gold Deer, Byleth reunites with Claude and instead helps him unite the fractured houses of the Leicester Alliance, and eventually they absorb Fargus under their banner because Dimitri is no longer around. Mm-hmm. So there's not like one timeline. There's like different branching timelines, basically.
Yeah.
So in this version, after taking down Edelgard, Byleth and Claude learn about those who slither in the dark, which are a faction of cultists who have been pulling strings under the surface of Fodlan for years. Those who slither in the dark summon undead versions of Nemesis and Nemesis-like team, these ancient warriors who all of the nobility have crests named after. And you fight basically like the noble warriors of past in the final battle.
Oh.
It's really cool. If you pick the Black Eagles, there's actually 2 routes you have access to. And this is the one that I did the first one. So the default Black Eagles route is Byleth reunites with Edelgard, and the 2 unsuccessfully try to pull each other to their side of the conflict. Edelgard dips out, and you basically lead the rest of the Black Eagles students and the people of the church to fight against Adrestia. And you it's kind of follows you're kind of like a neutral path. You're basically like the path of the church. That's the only one I haven't done, because if you reach a certain level of support with Edelgard before the end of part 1, then Edelgard actually pulls Byleth and the rest of the Black Eagles in on her side on the attack at the end of part 1.
Oh.
Which this one rules because she explains to you, hey, actually, I'm not the bad guy. Listen, why? Because Rhea is actually an ancient dragon deity.
I read ahead before you said
it. Archbishop Rhea is an ancient dragon deity that's been secretly ruling over Fodlan for centuries. So Aegold blames the horrors of the nobility system and everything that she and her classmates have experienced on Rhea and the rest of the church, and decides we got to burn it all down, baby. And part 2 is metal as hell, and you just take over the world with the Adrestian Empire, and it's great. And Edelgard is my queen.
Is this the canon story?
So there
know?
is no canon story. I think technically Blue Lions is supposedly the canon story, but you're supposed to. It is lame. I think what you're supposed to do is do Blue Lions first, then Black Eagles, then Golden Deer, because Golden Deer reveals the most about the world.
Okay.
But Golden Deer's like that fight with Nemesis is like the true ending of the game, in my opinion, because Edelgard's route runs very short, and Dimitri's route runs pretty short as well.
Okay.
And
so
both of those endings are unfulfilling, in my opinion.
I'm gonna jump ahead.
Yeah.
Have you played Three Hopes? Warriors Three Hopes? Oh, it's not out yet. Okay. I was gonna say. Oh, there it is. Switch 2022. Okay. Because
So
it says
actually,
it's the direct story
So
sequel.
let's dovetail into that. So real quick, there's a couple Fire Emblem spinoffs, and I'm just going to name off very quickly. So in 2015, a Atlas who does Persona and Shin Megami Tensei released Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is Shin Megami Tensei, like the acronym of Shin Megami Tensei spelled backwards. It's a mashup of Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem characters, where pop singers in modern day Tokyo summon Fire Emblem characters like Persona. Weird.
Okay.
There is a mobile game named Fire Emblem Heroes that came out in 2017. It's a gachapon game, which if you don't know what a gachapon game is, it's you Kyle's feverishly shaking his head or nodding his head.
I played a lot of Fire Emblem Heroes.
Do you want to explain what Fire Emblem Hero is, Kyle?
It's a turn. I mean, it's watered down. It's very like you get one of 10, 15 missions that like you get randomly dropped into. You earn in-game currency that you spend on booster packs that you can open new heroes to shuffle into your party. It's very predatory. It's pitched as free to play, but if you don't put money into it, you're not going to get any of the good characters.
It preys on like people love these characters.
Yep. Yeah. And they did a lot of like the 5-star summer outfit is now available, so you can pay $50 and you'll be guaranteed to get your favorite character super powerful in a skimpy outfit. And like it did a lot of that.
It's Nintendo's most successful mobile game ever.
Nintendo's most successful mobile game ever. I played it without spending, and I did manage to, like, if I spent money, it was less than $20, but I played it for about a year when it came out until the first scantily clad summer release came out. I was like, oh, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
Great.
And then, like I mentioned, Koei Tecmo released Fire Emblem Warriors also in 2017, it's a Musou game, which is like Dynasty Warriors, where you have a character and you hack and slash a bunch of enemies on the screen at the same time, and you're killing like 100 enemies at a time. Hyrule Warriors is another one like this for Zelda.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Kyle mentioned the next Fire Emblem game to come out this year is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, which is a direct sequel or kind of a sequel to Three Houses, much like Age of Calamity is a sequel to Hyrule Warriors. Okay, so one last thing we're going to do, and then we're going to close out here, is there are a ton of Fire Emblem characters. There are almost 600 in total. I wanted to talk just really quick. One of the things about Fire Emblem is just like the characters themselves and the fact that, yes, this is a very horny game. So the idea of like waifus and husbandos is definitely a thing with this game. People love these games because you can just like you can ship all these characters together. Three Houses introduced some gay characters, not a lot, but some. A lot of the fans are, hoping for more. So I just wanted to talk about some of the most popular males, non-hero, non-protagonist males, and some of the most popular non-protagonist females. So this is a quick round robin. So in the image thing here, these last 10 images, we see images 25 through 29. We've got Felix from Three Houses, who is kind of like your edgelord sword boy. He's your Sasuke. And then we've got Sylvain from Three Houses, who's your surly fuckboy.
Yep. That's what that picture is showing.
These are archetypes, yes.
Yep. Brady is the next one. Brady is from Fire Emblem Awakening. He is one of the child characters. He's really interesting. He's kind of like a punky, like he's got like a scar and he's got like a punky punkster attitude, but he's like a healer. And he's like very much breaking the mold of the traditional cleric who's like pious and good and stuff.
Okay.
But he's very brash, and he was like kicked out of a church in his timeline. But he's a really good healer.
He's
I like
Dr.
people like
House.
Brady a lot.
He's Dr. House.
Kind of. He's kind of like
Emblem.
Dr. House. Yeah. The next one is Lion from Sacred Stones. He's actually the antagonist in Sacred Stones. He's popular. I mean, again, he's a very pretty man. But his whole thing is like, he's very frail. He's a frail mage, and he was like put as the emperor of this civilization, but he didn't think he was powerful enough. He thought he was too weak, and he succumbed to the temptation to use one of his sacred stone to try to resurrect his father, who he felt was a great leader. So he's kind of like a fall from grace character. And then this final one, we've got Takumi, who is from, or Takumi from Fire Emblem Fates, who he is the one who, he's kind of like, when you meet him as Corrin, at first he's like, no, fuck you. You're like, I don't want to deal with you. You're like Norian scum. And if you side with Nor, he's the one that gets bloodlust and like basically like comes for you and your whole family.
Oh, wow.
But people love him because he's like the Ice Queen of Fates, where like if you side with Hoshido, he like breaks down and actually he's like a softie at heart. So
okay. Okay.
All right, let's talk about the women. Images from images 30 to 34. We have image 30. We have Bernadetta from Three Houses. She is the Notice Me Senpai archer. But one fun thing that Fire Emblem does about Notice Me Senpai characters is they all have ridiculous crit rates.
Yeah.
So Bernadetta at the end of the game has such a body count on her hands. She is an absolute murderer. Image 31 is Camilla from Fire Emblem Fates.
Subtle.
We needed a boob ghost. We didn't have a boob ghost yet.
Yep. Need I say more? Dorothea from Three Houses is the next one. Image 32. She's also got boobs and a hat.
This one has a hat.
I like Dorothea as a character. She is very interesting. She's like a commoner. She's an opera singer. So her whole thing is like she's part of the Black Eagles gang. She's like, yeah, let's burn down the world. This shit sucks. But she's also like a very like powerful mage. Then speaking of powerful mages, we've got Tharja from Fire Emblem Awakening, who is our goth necromancer.
Love it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one here is Anna. And Anna is kind of like the Nurse Joy of Fire Emblem. She appears in the very first Fire Emblem as a normal civilian, and later shows up as a shop owner of a secret shop that you can find.
Oh yeah,
cool. And
okay.
Anna comes back in very much like a Nurse Joy faction. She just exists in like she's a
like
Nexus
Tingle.
being.
She's like Tingle.
She's the Fire Emblem's Nexus being. She just exists in every universe.
Cool.
She's
as
the
shop
JFK
owner.
assassination of Fire Emblem.
Sure. But people love her because she's very iconic because she shows up in almost every Fire Emblem game. That's it. That's all I've got. You guys did great sticking along as long as you did. Let's do last minute thoughts, comments, feelings.
I like it. I mean, if they were to put out another one that maybe doesn't have the dating sim undertones that I think Three Houses might have had, then I would be in.
I wouldn't count on it, Todd.
Well, that's why I said what I said, Kyle.
Three Houses sold very well.
Like most Nintendo games released to the Famicom, I really think that the gameplay is something that I could get into, but in the 20 to 30 years since it was released, it's picked up a lot of pieces to keep it relevant that I'm not so into. But I will say, I mean, like, the story is fine enough to follow. It's not like, well, okay, let me take that back. It's got a formula, and it's fine to follow the formula, and that's fine. Oh my God, I've never been as lost in noun soup as I am right now. Like, names became meaningless to me 7 games ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why, like we got to the games I started playing, and I could tell the main characters, and then beyond that, I need a picture will evoke something from me, but the names are gone.
Part of that is intentional. These characters are meant to be, they're going to die. So a lot of these characters are very one-dimensional, right? Like, if you have an archer, they probably don't love people. If you have a knight, they probably are very loyal, right?
Yeah.
Like,
there's
true. Not, I mean, they have almost 600 characters. Like, you got to have some repeats and some duds there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just like, this is insane. They don't name all the red shirts in Star Trek. They just kill them all.
That's what this is. Yeah.
For some reason, they named them all, and that's a lot. So, yeah, grid-based RTS games, cool. Horny anime battle school, not my thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna
Kyle, horny anime battle school, my thing.
I'm gonna play Awakening or Three Houses tonight. So
I've already got Fates fired up. So.
Gonna start a new save file on one of those two. So here we go.
Yeah. I'll end this just by saying, if you're listening out there and you're interested, maybe you've never gotten in Fire Emblem before, and you're interested, you're thinking like, where do I start? If you have access to a 3DS, I would say start with Awakening. That is a really good entry point. It is more Fire. It is a good mashup of classic and modern Fire Emblem.
It's the most Fire Emblem with the best quality of life updates. Because you've got casual mode.
Well said.
In addition to easy, hard, and ludicrous mode.
If you don't have access to a 3DS and you're just on Switch, honestly, your options are pretty limited. Unfortunately, like, there's not a lot of stuff on the Virtual Console. There's nothing on the Virtual Console. There's not been any remakes on Switch outside of... So really, your only option is Three Houses on Switch, which is... It's a good game. Again, don't get me wrong. I've put 120 hours in Three Houses. I think it's an excellent game. But it is for a very particular type of person, is the thing.
If you can get a GBA emulator working, the two, Fire Emblem and Sacred Stones both are decent, are good entries, and like with where games have progressed, aren't terribly hard in modern strategy games. If you can get a ROM hack working, Matt, one of those two would be, you would like one of those two, and has a lot less of the dating sim stuff. Cool. It's just the supports in that.
Yeah, which are, I mean, those are just like friends. Like, yes, there's a few like marriages, but it's minor. So the other thing is, go watch, if you're interested in the character stuff, go watch Brian David Gilbert's Unraveled on Fire Emblem. It's like 20
so
minutes
good.
long. The big joke is he categorizes all of the 600 characters into archetypes, and there are 12. So it's pretty funny. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to Debate This. Of course, you can follow along with the arguments on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Debate This Cast, or on our website at debatethiscast.com. Once more, if you want to commission your own episode of Flavor Text, like maybe you want us to talk about anime husbands from another series, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/debatethiscast. Joining up at the $25 level will give you access to the post show, the Google Doc notes, and our monthly movie nights. And then, of course, after 3 months, you'll unlock your first Flavor Text episode. I mentioned YouTube. At the time of this recording, we have uploaded seasons 1 through 4 of Debate This to our YouTube channel. You can find us by searching Debate This Cast on YouTube. If you are the kind of person who enjoys podcasts on YouTube, please search for us, find us, subscribe to the channel. And if we get over 100 subscribers, we can actually have the URL, youtube.com/debatethiscast. Until next time, I'm Andrew Henderson.
I'm Kyle. Get your horny out of my tactical turn-based RPGs, Harper.
I'm Todd. If this game was set in a Baltimore drug situation starring Dominic West, it would be The Wire Emblem, Thomas.
And I'm Matt, not Gaiden teen movie, Cole.
and we're saying thanks for debating with us. And if you think we're wrong, you can come fight us behind the horniest swing sets, nerds.
Please don't do that.
I don't want those horny.
Don't fight us behind the horny swing sets. Just the normal ones.
Tell me
will
which
do.
ones those are so I can avoid them.